Chapter 176. Although some modern equipment had been connected to the Bailu Temple, as a relatively important library, there had been a powerful restriction since ancient times to prevent others from prying into it. Moreover, because it was left behind by the ancestors of the Bailu Temple, it was operated by the power of the earth veins. In terms of level, it was unknown how much higher it was than the current temple master of the Bailu Temple. Once it was broken, there was almost no possibility of repairing it, so it was not modified. Therefore, in bad weather, the library would be very dark. This was not a problem for most of the disciples of the Bailu Temple, because as long as the procedures were completed, the books borrowed could be brought back to the room to read. However, Qin Xingyan clearly did not intend to do so. Although Su Xinxing did not urge her too much, she could still hear that the other party was a little anxious, so she directly rushed back to the Bailu Temple, and then directly went into the library to search for information related to soul cutting without rest. In the dark room, piles of ancient books were piled on the floor, emitting a faint sandalwood fragrance. The girl was also sitting cross-legged on the floor, tirelessly looking for her target from the pile of books. After an unknown amount of time, her eyes lit up. "This is it, I finally found it." Holding the thread-bound ancient book with Azure Netherworld Theory written on the cover, Qin Xingyan's face revealed a mixed expression of joy and relief at the completion of a great task. The author of this book called himself Old Man Ji. Born with a netherworld body, he did not belong to the world of the living nor the netherworld, which made his childhood very miserable. However, this did not make Old Man Ji yield. Instead, it made him work even harder to cultivate just to change his fate. After growing up, this Old Man Ji joined Buddhism and studied Buddhism. One day, he accidentally made a breakthrough and used Buddhist magic to forge two divine swords, named White Tower and Lu Guan. After that, he exchanged knowledge with his Taoist friends, comprehended the Taoist scriptures, and referred to the three corpses execution method, and used the two divine swords to cut off a part of his soul that was exposed outside of his body, and cultivated it into a half-spirit, thus becoming the first half-spirit in the world. He jumped out of the two realms of yin and yang and was not bound by the rules of the two realms. Later, he was invited by Yama to live on the other side of the river of forgetfulness in the underworld, and since then he had not appeared in the world. I see, in addition to a sharp weapon that can cut the soul, there is also a need for the three corpses execution method. Many people might think that the three corpses execution method had long been lost, but this was not the truth. But that wasn't the case. There was a handwritten copy in the White Deer Temple's library. It wasn't just the White Deer Temple. In fact, almost all the sects with a long history had these things. But after the end of the mythological era, this thing had long become tasteless and of little value. The reason was very simple. For example, if a restaurant got a recipe that was enough to be the treasure of the restaurant, it would most likely not show it to its peers. But if they got a recipe on how to cook dragon meat, they would most likely show it to others. Because there were no dragons in this world, even if they showed it, they would not lose anything. It was the same for the three corpses execution method. No one in the world could cultivate to the level of three corpses execution method, so it did not matter if others saw it. That was why this thing became a staple in ancient sections. So, I'm almost done with the preparation. I'll borrow the divine artifact from other sections. With Senior Su's means, it should be no problem. There were still many sects in the Celestial Empire that still had divine artifacts, but many of them were too weak. They did not have enough cultivation to use them. It shouldn't be too difficult to find one that could sever souls from the rest of the items. After writing down the solution she found in the notebook she carried with her, the previous page was a grocery list. The girl planned to leave the library and rush back to Jiangjin to deliver the information to Su Xinxing. However, the girl, who was out of her focused state, finally felt a powerful force gathering above her head. Almost without any hesitation, she rolled to the back. Almost at the same time, the sound of glass breaking came from outside the library. Qin Xingyan was willing to bet that this was the sound of the ancestors' restriction being destroyed. Then, the roof and the place he was just standing on were blasted into pieces by a yellow beam of light from the sky. What? Ever since Qin Xingyan joined the Bailu Temple, he had never seen an enemy attack the library. Now that this happened in front of her, it was hard for her to accept. But immediately she realized that something was wrong. "What the hell are you?" Looking at the thing that flashed across the destroyed roof, Qin Xingyan growled in surprise. After a moment, as if it heard her question, the black shadow finally stopped in front of her. It was a sparrow. Or rather, it was a green bird that looked very similar to a sparrow. Qin Xingyan remembered that he had seen this creature when he was a child. Green bird. Is that you, Green Dawn? Unfortunately, it's not me. The other party didn't pretend to be polite and just replied indifferently, my name is Green Bird, I'm Green Dawn's elder brother. Were those riots caused by you? Qin Xingyan continued to ask. Although the library was almost completely isolated from the outside sound, Qin Xingyan could now hear the constant shouting of the Bailu Temple disciples from other places. The place where the main hall was supposed to be on the mountain was now occupied by a column of black smoke. It seemed that it was also on fire. Probably. The other party didn't deny or confirm, but this kind of indifferent attitude made Qin Xingyan feel even more uncomfortable. Why did you come here? Qin Xingyan asked sternly. To retrieve the thing that Green Dawn lost in this world. The sparrow that called itself Green Dawn flew into the air and looked down at Qin Xingyan. Okay, quickly hand it over. You mean the thing that you're missing is actually in my hands? Qin Xingyan quickly went through all the useful assets she had, but she didn't find anything valuable. That's right, quickly hand it over or I won't be polite. The sparrow arrogantly gesticulated, but it was almost taken away by a passing lynx. Even if you say that. Wait, the girl was originally confused, but at this time she suddenly remembered something. That's right, when Green Dawn left he did leave something for her, and that was the feather of the Green Dawn, which was said to bring good luck and happiness. What do you want that for? Qin Xingyan became vigilant. I don't need to talk nonsense with you. Tell me, are you going to hand it over or not? The sparrow suddenly grew in size and in just 2 breaths, it became almost as big as a peacock. It stood on the beam that was not completely burned down, and showed Qin Xingyan a demonstration. Right at this moment, a little black cat slipped in from nowhere and easily knocked over Qin Fu, who was in the middle of striking a pose with its head. Chapter 177. Yo, I'm not late yet, am I? Su Xinxing waved his paw at Qin Xingyan, who was still in shock. This voice, don't tell me it's... Senior Su? You, how did you become like this? When Su Xinxing was turned into a cat by Mo Li, Qin Xingyan was helping Chihaya Fukuyama with his special training at the Earth God in Jiangjin, so he didn't know what happened. Now that he saw this scene without any mental preparation, he was so shocked that he stuttered. It's nothing, just a small problem. I'll be fine soon. Su Xinxing shook the cat, then looked at the cyan sparrow with his round eyes due to the dim environment in the library. He asked disapprovingly, is that guy the culprit? Although he still found it hard to believe that Su Xinxing turned into a cat, Qin Xingyan still nodded and confirmed his doubts. The cyan sparrow flew in the sky angrily and roared loudly with a voice that was completely different from its size. Damn mortals. Damn demonic cats, you have to pay for this. Fire arrow mallet. Good. The sparrow was once again sent flying by the black cat's unexpected attack and hit a bookshelf. The bookshelf couldn't bear the weight and fell down with a creak, burying the sparrow in wood fragments and ancient books. Senior Su, I think we should at least wait for it to finish speaking, then ask it why it did this. Qin Xingyan, who was watching from the side, expressed his opinion with uncertainty. You're still too young, Miss Xingyan, a dream. Su Xinxing immediately stood up and pretended to be mature as he reprimanded the girl. When I was cleaning Sakura's apartment, I found your household register under the sofa. In terms of age, I'm 1 year older than you, Senior Su, Qin Xingyan sighed. Also, can you stop calling me that weird name? Su Xinxing immediately turned his cat ears and pretended that he didn't hear anything. He continued to speak calmly. Let me tell you, in this case the other party's purpose can be categorized into 2 categories. One is simply to satisfy their own desires or to be psychopathic or something else. The other is because of some difficulties that they have to violate their own moral values to do evil. After a pause he continued, in the first case, even if you listen to what it has to say, you won't get anything other than anger. In the end you'll still have to fight to solve the problem. In the second case, if you put it in a literary work or anime, it's the so-called whitewashing. When the time comes, the people facing the difficult choice will become us. Instead of that, it's better to just kill it before it speaks. Then we'll feel at ease knowing nothing. Qin Xingyan subconsciously felt that there was something wrong with Su Xinxing's twisted logic, but he couldn't find an argument to refute it. He could only stand there with a bitter face, not knowing what to do. Fortunately, someone helped him out of this situation. The pile of broken books and wood that buried the sparrow was suddenly blown away. Then a green chicken-sized sparrow jumped out again. Humph, I was careless just now, but this time, V's head oh. This time, the sparrow was directly knocked out of the house by Su Shenxing's headbutt. After hitting the hole in the wall, it disappeared from the sight of the man and the cat in a parabola that resembled Newton's classical mechanics. As she watched the sparrow disappear, Qin Xingyan was stunned for a moment. She then gritted her teeth and said to Su Shenxing, who was currently smoothing her feathers, "I'm sorry, Senior Su. Even so, I still want to know why it did this, because..." Halfway through his sentence, the girl's voice became low. He couldn't believe it. They were both green birds, and Qing Meng could be said to be the green bird that saved her life. But this time the guy that appeared was inexplicably fierce. Qin Xingyan couldn't accept it at all. Su Shenxing raised his head and looked at the girl with his bright yellow cat eyes. The girl looked back at him without any fear, and Su Shenxing could feel her determination. Finally, we're here. At this moment, and Xinghua finally arrived at the scene. Why didn't you use the power of the holy flashing sword? Su Shenxing looked away and asked the little girl, with the power of the holy flashing sword, it wouldn't take more than a second to get here from the foot of the mountain, right? His question made the little girl scratch her face embarrassedly. Right now this body of mine is still too young and too weak. Even if I do my best to refine my magic power, I can only activate the sacred sword of brilliance once. If I use that opportunity to travel, won't I become a burden that can't do anything when I arrive here? It's better if I don't make it in time. The little girl answered logically. That's why I asked you to sit on my back. Thank you for your hospitality. Xinghua rolled her eyes. That way my whole body will be weak, and I'll be even weaker than if I used the holy flashing sword. Qin Xingyan looked at the little girl who was talking and laughing with Su Shenxing. He couldn't help but be surprised. She looked like a child, but whether it was the way she talked or the way she behaved, it didn't match her age at all. At this moment, the thick dark clouds in the sky suddenly began to gather like a whirlpool, finally forming a gigantic bird. Its wings were like the clouds in the sky, and its wingspans spanned hundreds of miles. Just by flapping its wings, it created a gale that was strong enough to turn all the tofu dregs at the foot of the mountain into ruins. However, it was clear that the enemy's attack was not limited to its wings. The gigantic cloud bird opened its beak, and purplish-blue lightning flashed continuously in what should be its neck and tail pouch. Finally, the lightning gathered in its beak. Just by looking at the lightning, there was no doubt about its power. The next moment, a voltage of several billion Ford easily penetrated the air that was supposed to be insulating and turned into terrifying fork-shaped lightning, shrouding the entire Crimson Cloud Mountain. How dare you do this? Su Shenxing was furious. He jumped to the roof of the library in 2 or 3 steps and then jumped toward the lightning. The next moment, a roar resounded throughout the entire Crimson Cloud Mountain, and almost all the lightning fell in the main hall of the Bailu Temple. Well, because this thing was standing on the top of the mountain and it was the highest place on the mountain, plus there was a dragon-shaped lightning rod on the roof, it caused all the lightning that the enormous cloud bird in the sky had brewed with great difficulty to strike this place. As for Su Shenxing, because the library originally only had 1 floor, and the terrain of the building was far lower than the main hall of the Bailu Temple, and he was now just a black cat, even if he jumped up, he would only be a sesame seed in front of the power of nature. Naturally, the lightning couldn't hit him. This caused the disciples in the main hall of the White Deer Monastery to be filled with grief. They had finally managed to extinguish the fire that had started for no apparent reason, only to be struck by a bolt of lightning out of nowhere and set aflame again. Forget it. An elder patted the shoulder of the temple dean, who was in tears. It's all burnt. Chapter 178. Leaving aside the Bailu Temple, which was the main hall of the temple once again, Su Shenxing did not suffer the impact that he had imagined. Instead, he passed through the wings of the giant cloud bird without any hindrance. He made a 720-degree turn in the sky and successfully landed with his face firmly on the ground. Due to his posture, he inevitably had the same feeling as when he fell from the sky and created a crater. Where am I? Where are my teammates? Who the **CK is attacking me? Obviously, these 3 questions were not difficult to answer. Su Shenxing was now about halfway up Crimson Cloud Mountain. He had to admit that he was lucky that he did not roll all the way to the foot of the mountain. Qin Xingyan and An Xinghua were still in the library at the top of the mountain. As for the electric arcs that struck him from time to time, there was no doubt that it was the work of the cloud bird. After the test just now, Su Shenxing also understood that the cloud bird was not the Kunping in Zhuangzi's The Carefree Tour. It was just a green sparrow that transformed into a giant bird with the help of clouds. That was why his headbutt did not hit the cloud bird. After all, clouds were just floating objects made of water droplets or ice crystals. They were similar to fog. If Su Shenxing was still in his human form, he could summon the holy sword and cut down the cloud bird's incarnation. However, he was now in the form of a cat. Even if Yunlin guaranteed that he would be fine even if he was hit by 1,000,000,000 volts, it would be much more troublesome to kill the cloud bird. Of course, the current situation was not unsolvable. In fact, compared to the various near-hopeless situations that Su Shenxing had encountered before, the current situation could even be said to be better. First of all, the culprit that Xinghua was looking for when she returned to this era was almost certain to be the green bird. In other words, if she defeated the green bird, her mission would be completed. Besides, although Su Shenxing had been lured away from the mountain, while this should be the active sentence, even if he was not beside Qin Xingyan, there was still Xinghua with the holy sword. If the cloud bird wanted to attack, it would definitely be killed in an instant if it exposed a flaw. In the end, even after becoming a cat, Su Shenxing was confident that he was the strongest cat on earth. And the so-called cat in the food chain was the bane of sparrows. Thinking of this, Su Shenxing shook his fur and ran to the top of the mountain like a gust of wind. On the other hand, after losing Su Shenxing, Qin Xingyan's situation was not as optimistic as he thought. Due to the fact that the sacred flashing sword could only be used once, Xinghua could only grit her teeth and endure the cloud bird's terrifying lightning. If it weren't for Qin Xingyan's 100 herbs, Su Shenxing would probably only see his only student almost roasted alive by the time he returned. Qin Xingyan also had a flying sword called Red Sleeves. However, due to the huge difference in strength, Red Sleeves would be shot down by Qin Xingyan's lightning every time it flew halfway. Why on earth? For Green Dawn's feathers, would you do something so outrageous? Due to the large consumption of magical power, Qin Xingyan was already a little out of breath when he spoke. Shut up, mortal, you don't understand what it means at all. To Qin Xingyan's surprise, Green Dawn, who had been ignored the previous few times, did not try to bluff her way out this time. Instead it roared angrily. It's hope. However, Qin Xingyan was not frightened. Instead he answered without hesitation. What? When Green Dawn left, it told me that its feathers can bring happiness and hope to others. Therefore, I will never hand over the hope that my friend has entrusted to me so easily. Speaking of this, Qin Xingyan threw out a large number of talismans. The yellow talismans moved without wind and formed several formations on the ground. The girl's face changed from calm to serious. As the first disciple of the Bailu Temple, as long as she was well prepared, she was qualified to use the spirit vein of Crimson Heaven Mountain. Although it was not as powerful as using the Bailu Temple's treasure to control the spirit vein, it was still more powerful. The old Abbey Dean had held on for 30 seconds when he was in the perfect form Su Shenxing. Well said, but it's meaningless. Qing Fu snorted coldly. That's right, the feathers of the blue bird can indeed bring good luck to people. However, in our entire lives, only 3 of our tail feathers have such an effect. The reason for this is that the 3 tail feathers contain the 3 souls of the blue bird. Xinghua noticed that although Qing Fu was still as cold and arrogant as before, she was now able to communicate with Qin Xingyan on an equal footing, compared to when she used to attack Qin Xingyan without a word. Although it didn't say anything, it seemed that this spiritual bird had acknowledged Qin Xingyan. Anyway, before Su Shenxing came back, this situation where she didn't need to fight was the best. She glanced at Qin Xingyan, who was frowning, and muttered to herself. She hoped that this Qi practitioner could stall for as long as possible. Because of this, every time a Green Dawn gives away all its tail feathers, no matter how long it has cultivated, it will immediately fall into samsara and enter the animal path because of the loss of its soul. Green Dawn's voice became lower and lower, as if it was sad for the fate of the Green Dawn. Could it be that? Green Dawn's tail feathers. Thinking of how impatient Green Dawn was to take away the feathers, Qin Xingyan widened his eyes. Have they all been given away? No, there are 2 left. Didn't that mean that except for this one there were no missing feathers? Qin Xingyan showed a rare expression of, "Are you kidding me?" Even Xinghua, who was listening on the side, staggered and almost fell. But it suddenly suffered from soullessness some time ago, and now it has lost one of its souls and 4 of its spirits. If it wasn't for the fact that as a spiritual bird, its vitality is much stronger than ordinary creatures, it would have died long ago. But whether it loses its soul or its spirits, it will fall into a very dangerous state. The cloud bird's voice sounded regretful and no one knew what it was hiding. But after hearing this, Qin Xingyan put down his hands, because there was no reason to continue fighting with the cloud bird. "You should have told me earlier. If that's the case, my feathers..." "Wait a minute." Before Qin Xingyan took out the feathers he carried with him, Su Shinxing had already run to the platform. "Don't give it the feathers." But..." Qin Xingyan's eyes widened. He didn't expect Su Shinxing to say something like this. However, Su Shinxing didn't look at him. Instead, he stared at the cloud bird in the sky and asked unhappily, "Don't you think it's too shameful to only tell me half the story?" The cloud bird was silent for a moment and didn't answer Su Shinxing. "Senior Su, what's going on?" The cloud bird's attitude made Qin Xingyan realize that things weren't as simple as he thought. "Xingyan, do you know why this guy attacked us as soon as we met? It didn't have any intention of talking to us at all." Su Shinxing turned his head and stared at Qin Xingyan with his bright yellow cat eyes. His words made Qin Xingyan suddenly realize that the cloud bird's actions were indeed very strange. The blue bird wasn't a ferocious monster. Logically speaking, even if it needed the feathers urgently, it wouldn't attack them as soon as it came up. "If I'm not wrong, you must have been in poor health for a while, right?" Su Shinxing continued to ask. "Yes, I was always sick in bed when I was young." Qin Xingyan subconsciously answered honestly. "Then when did you recover from your illness?" The young girl remembered that she had indeed received Qing Meng's feathers, and her body had suddenly gotten better. "That's right. This guy attacked you from the beginning because he thought you knew that without that feather you would die soon." But Senior Su, I'm about to enter the Golden Core realm. A mere illness. Unfortunately, I'm afraid your condition isn't a simple illness." Su Shinxing sighed. "I'm sorry, but I can't solve it in a short time." A long time ago, Su Shinxing had noticed that something was wrong with the girl's body. However, just like how berserkers only knew how to cut people and not bandage them, if they used force they might break someone's arm before it was bandaged. Su Shinxing, who wasn't skilled in this field, didn't have the confidence to cure the girl, so he didn't say anything. So, in the end, the negotiation fell apart. And Xinghua turned her head away from Qin Xingyan and hugged Su Shinxing. "Teacher, are you confident that you can defeat that big guy now?" "Of course." Su Shinxing probably wanted to give a thumbs up, but unfortunately, a cat's claws couldn't make such complicated movements. In the end, it looked like Xiao Hei was struggling and stretched out its claws. "Although I have some other ideas, I won't feel at ease if I don't beat this guy up. How can my hair grow if I don't feel at ease?" In the blink of an eye, the cloud bird also understood that things were not going to end well. It spun around and stirred up a powerful gust of wind that was close to a horizontal tornado. It almost rolled up the ground of Crimson Cloud's mountain. "Use the power of the Holy Sword of Brilliance and throw me towards the eye of the tornado." Su Shinxing raised his head and shouted at the little girl. "Understood." The little girl pinched Su Shinxing's cat head. "Su Shinxing, don't pinch my face." After 2 rounds of accumulating power, she shouted a strange chant and threw him towards the tornado that was surging towards him. Oh, Pai King Kong's gun is broken." Although he wanted to complain about the girl's throwing action, Su Shinxing finally adjusted himself to conform to the principles of aerodynamics and flew towards the eye of the tornado. By the way, is that a dog's skill? Chapter 179. Although the Crimson Cloud 8 sceneries of Crimson Cloud Mountain was not well known among ordinary people, it was a rare sight for many mountain climbers and sightseeing enthusiasts. Therefore, even though the Tourism Bureau had said in advance that to ensure the safety of tourists, climbing Crimson Cloud Mountain without permission was prohibited, there were still some people who did so secretly. Mr. Su from Jin City was one of them. Although not many people knew about him before he got married, Mr. Su was also a well-known backpacker in the circle. However, after getting married and having a lovely daughter, he no longer had any private time and no longer went out to travel with his former backpackers. The rumored Crimson Cloud Mountain had always been one of his unfulfilled wishes. Therefore, during these few days when the company was on vacation and his wife took his daughter back to visit her parents, he found his old backpacker friends who used to travel with him. They planned to form a tour group to Crimson Cloud Mountain. Of course, it was without permission. For some reason, it was very difficult to get permission to climb Crimson Cloud Mountain. If it weren't for the recent construction of holiday estates at the foot of Crimson Cloud Mountain and the lower part of the mountain that had begun to open to tourists, he would have thought that it might be a testing ground for the secret weapons of the Chinese Empire. In short, today he finally climbed the Crimson Cloud Mountain that he had dreamed of, although there was still some distance to the top of the mountain. The other backpacker friends were finally warned by the public officials. He was the only one who insisted on climbing up. However, it was here that he saw a scene that ordinary people might not be able to see in their lifetime. Originally, the dark clouds in the sky accumulated and gathered, finally forming a huge cloud bird. However, the sky did not clear up because of this. The dark clouds were still there, and the clouds, which were originally calm, were now like the sea in a typhoon. The waves rose and fell, majestic and spectacular. At first he thought that the cloud bird was just a phenomenon formed by natural clouds. After all, he was a person who had traveled extensively and had witnessed many miraculous scenes. But then he realized that he seemed to be wrong. This was because the huge cloud bird was just like a real creature. When it flapped its wings, it formed a powerful hurricane. If it wasn't for the fact that the dark clouds were gradually swallowed by the cloud bird and seemed to have calmed down a little, it would have rained a long time ago. It was no joke to encounter heavy rain near the top of the mountain. Once they were involved in a mudslide, they would probably die. However, Mr. Su felt that his target should not be the heavy rain, but the monster in the sky. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been scared to death, but Mr. Su was different. Although he instinctively hugged the big rock to prevent it from being swept away by the sudden wind, his mind was still calm. He tried his best to maintain his balance in the wind and moved little by little to the lee of the wind. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. However, the sudden thunder gave him a fright. He quickly looked up to see if it was going to rain. Compared to strong winds, heavy rain was more likely to cause landslides and mudslides. Reality proved that he was overthinking. The sky was still cloudy, but there was no sign of rain. After a while, Mr. Su, who had nothing to do on the leeward side, suddenly had the urge to court death. No matter how the cloud bird was formed, he could not let go of such a magical scene. Therefore he took out his phone and started recording. Along the way, Mr. Su checked the signal and found that both the 4G network and the phone signal were out of range. Because of this, he accidentally dropped his phone on the ground and broke a corner of it. It was not uncommon for there to be no signal in the wilderness, so Mr. Su did not take it to heart. He was a little disappointed that he couldn't announce this shocking phenomenon in real time on his Weibo. After all, the cloud bird's gigantic body could almost cover half of the mountains in Zhejiang. Even the people at the foot of the mountain and in the nearby cities should be able to see it. He couldn't be considered the first person to discover it. Fortunately, when this video was released, he would definitely gain a lot of fans for being able to capture such a spectacle at such a close distance. Unfortunately, he did not know that the cloud bird could only be seen from Crimson Cloud Mountain. Even if people from other places looked in this direction, they could only see a sea of clouds that looked like upside-down boiling water. Carefully, he reached his hand out from behind the rock and placed it at a suitable angle so that he could not leave the leeward side and see the video recorded by the phone. However, the video displayed by the phone surprised him. Although the cloud bird was still there, for some reason, it seemed to have been cut in half vertically from head to tail by a huge sharp blade. The ability to move like a living creature had completely disappeared. It was as if it had been killed and turned into a product of ordinary dark clouds. As time passed, it gradually dissipated. What the hell is going on? Mr. Su was puzzled. Fortunately, he did not need to worry about it. Not long after he went down the mountain that day, someone from the relevant department brought a man dressed like a Taoist to visit him at the hotel where he was staying. After the group of people left, Mr. Su, who came back to his senses, realized that he seemed to have missed a day's worth of memory. However, with the explanation of his friends who came to Crimson Cloud Mountain with him, he found out that he had accidentally slept for a whole day because he was too tired from the excitement the day before yesterday. Even though Mr. Su was confused by this explanation, it was not just one person who said that. Furthermore, he did not lose any belongings and there was still a long time before the holiday ended, so he took it as the truth. The next day they successfully obtained the permit to climb Crimson Cloud Mountain and took many pictures of the scenery there. It could be considered a fruitful trip. When did I break a corner of my phone? On the day they were about to leave Zhejiang for home, Mr. Su wanted to organize the information in his phone because he did not have enough memory on his phone. It was then that he noticed that his phone seemed to have changed. He scratched his head and did not think much of it. He organized the pictures that he had taken earlier. Crimson Cloud 8 sceneries is not bad. This trip was worth it. Especially that 100-year-old red maple. It is a work of art. These pictures are so beautiful. When I go back my wife will be shocked. Then why is there a shedding black cat in this picture of the Taoist temple at the top of the mountain? I should delete it. Chapter 180. After defeating the Cloudbreaker bird, Su Xinxing returned to White Deer Temple with the green bird in his mouth and locked it in a bird cage. This bird cage is made of the essence of 1,000 arts, dark iron, cold jade, and the secret refining method of the Bailu Temple that has been passed down for thousands of years, Heaven 100 refinements. More than 20 of us worked together to make it. The old Abbey Dean of the Bailu Temple stroked his snow-white goatee and proudly introduced the bird cage to Su Xinxing. It's called the One Yang Nine Guards Cage. It's as famous as the suppressing demon tower of Mount Shu. It's a rare Taoist treasure. To be able to use such a thing to imprison Qing Miao, it seemed that the burning of the newly built main hall of the White Deer Monastery had indeed infuriated the monastery head. But I heard that Shu Mountain's demon subduing pagoda collapsed a few hundred years ago because it was a shoddy construction and the quality was too poor. It's said that someone was killed by it. Isn't it too unlucky to be as famous as that? Su Xinxing questioned. I always feel that Taoist things are not as durable as Buddhist ones. Almsgiver, you're mistaken. The construction quality of Buddhist and Taoist is actually similar. If you don't believe me, you can look at the Leifeng Tower. There's a song that says, Fahai, you don't know love. Leifeng Tower will fall. He's singing. As a Taoist master, you should have some integrity. Don't compare yourself to others. Su Xinxing complained in his heart. He then turned around and saw the green bird who had just woken up, pulling the 2 bars of the cage open and trying to squeeze out of the gap. Where's the promised Taoist treasure? Su Xinxing kicked the bird back into the bird cage and looked at the old Abbey Dean helplessly. Actually, the main usage of the One Yang Nine Guards cage is to throw it out like the flipping sky seal, the invisible dragon rod and the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. The old Abbey Dean was silent for a moment and then said with a righteous face. In short, it seemed that the Bailu Temple's captivity level was not reliable. However, Su Xinxing and the others didn't really want to kill the green bird. In the end, they booked a room for the disappointed old Abbey Dean, ignoring the other party's enthusiastic inquiries. Do you want an alchemy furnace? Or a fully automatic roasting chicken stove will do. I'll ask my disciples to go down the mountain to buy it. After casting a holy domain barrier outside the room to prevent it from escaping, the few of them stared at the green bird in the room. Qin Xingyan, how do you think we should deal with this guy? At first he wanted to ask it about gold box conjecture and then beat it. If he could not answer, he could not ask it about gold box conjecture. And it was gold box conjecture. Couldn't ask it gold box conjecture and beat it if it couldn't answer it could it? Therefore Su Xinxing gave the decision to Qin Xingyan, the first victim, after he was tired of comparing the size of their eyes. Since Su Xinxing defeated the green bird, the girl seemed to be absent-minded. She was probably thinking about what the green bird said before. Senior Su, after a while, the girl showed a determined and relieved expression and said softly, I still want to return Qing Meng's feather. Her words made Su Xinxing widen his eyes and his voice became a little more serious. But you'll die if you do that. My life, in a sense, was given to me by Qing Meng. That's why I was able to live until now. In other words, Qing Meng has given me nearly 15 years of life, and now it's time for me to return my life to him. Qin Xingyan said softly with sadness and reluctance. She squeezed out a smile and said, It's just that if I do that, it'll be difficult to explain to Master and the others. Do you want to die? Su Xinxing didn't answer but continued to ask. The two of them looked at each other like this and the air seemed to have become heavy. Of course I don't want to die. Qin Xingyan's smile collapsed and tears slid down her white jade-like face. But there's no other way. If I don't do this, Qing Meng will die. I can't just sit and watch it die. The girl's body was trembling as if she was afraid of her impending death. But even so, she had no intention of retracting her decision. She just looked at Su Xinxing stubbornly with tears in her eyes. Miss, I respect you for being a man. The green bird, who was tied up and lying on the table with an expression of "I'm almost a useless bird," heard Qin Xingyan's words, and couldn't help but struggle to express its appreciation for the girl. Shut up. Su Xinxing stepped on it again with his paw. For some reason, a suspicious blush appeared on the bird's face. Su Xinxing didn't care about the bird's strange behavior similar to Stockholm Syndrome. Instead, he wagged his tail and his somewhat serious expression completely softened. I see, I understand. But in fact, you don't need to return the feather to the bird called Qing Meng. But, if there's a better way to solve the problem, then there's no need to use such a stupid method, right? Senior Su, didn't you say that you don't know anything about souls? Qin Xingyan had pinned her hopes on Su Xinxing at first, but at that time, Su Xinxing told her that he only had some achievements in physics. Yes, I don't know much about that stuff, Su Xinxing nodded noncommittally. Even in the other world, Su Xinxing had to rely on exorcism physics to get past this kind of enemy. But I didn't say that Emily can't do anything about this situation, right? Then why was I so distressed just now? It's simple. After returning to Sakura's apartment, Emily spent about 10 minutes folding a paper crane by hand. Then he mimicked Doraemon's classic pose when he took out a prop. Then he used an emotionless voice to add some sound effects. Clang clang. This thing is called Soul Guard. It can ensure that your soul won't be attacked by external objects. Su Xinxing aptly explained Emily's actions. Bring this and you'll be safe. Qing Meng, who was still tied up, obviously didn't believe it. However, in the end she couldn't persuade Su Xinxing and the others. In the end she could only skeptically take the paper crane and leave the human world. In a sense, this farce could be considered to have come to an end. After the incident, Qin Xingyan began to move about in the sect that had artifacts that could cut souls. Li Tinghua's family also waited patiently. Su Xinxing was still in the form of a black cat. Because Emily refused to help him learn magic, it seemed that he could only continue to wait for the effects to wear off. Just when everything seemed to have calmed down, and Xinghua found Su Xinxing lying on the roof, sunbathing. Teacher, let's go on a date. Chapter 181. Although most of the sects in Huaxiao were different from foreign religions, there were occasionally some that were similar. For example, Rosuism, which worshipped the West Queen Mother as the main deity. Although the secular world believed that the Luo ancestor sect was founded by Luo Menghong 500 years ago, which was around the Ming dynasty, the truth was not so. The Luo ancestor sect could be traced back to about 3,000 years ago, to a vast neighboring country to the west of the Zhou dynasty, the Western Mother Empire, also known as the Western Mother Empire. In the biography of the Emperor of Mu, it was recorded that after the Emperor of Mu defeated the War Hounds, he began to tour the West and came to this place. He met the West Queen Mother, who was still on the ground at that time, and received a gift from her. Therefore he lived until he was more than 100 years old at that time, when the average age was only 40 years old. Rosuism was a sect founded by the believers of the West Queen Mother who witnessed the ascension of the West Queen Mother. Different from Buddhism and other sects that cultivated reincarnation and self-cultivation, Rosuism had almost no special cultivation methods, so it was also called the Wu-Wei sect. However, because of this, Rosuism was different from other sects in the inner world. Almost all of them were ordinary people and they were not afraid of karma, so they could get involved in the affairs of the human world at will. Similar to the churches in the West, the believers of Rosuism would only pass down the ancient beliefs from generation to generation as spiritual sustenance, and wait for the orders of the deities they worshipped to be interpreted by the clergy in the sect called the Di Tian messengers. Once during the Manchu dynasty, there were Di Tian messengers who passed down false oracles, fabricating that the West Queen Mother was called the Wu-Wei Divine Mother, and instructing the believers to change their identities and rebel in the name of Qing Shui, Tianli, Qinglian, etc., in order to gain wealth and power in the secular world. However, as time passed, because the spiritual energy in the world was getting thinner and thinner, the oracles passed down became rarer and rarer. Some of the younger generation who were born in the believers' families began to doubt the authenticity of the West Queen Mother. This was the main reason why the sects in the Celestial Empire could easily go extinct in modern times without supernatural abilities. The people of the Celestial Empire were too damn pragmatic. On this day, the current leader of Rosuism had just finished his meal and was planning to find a place to bask in the sun and take an afternoon nap to complete the doctrine of Rosuism. Everything is created by the mind, do nothing and have no desires. He was getting old, so it was easy for him to get sleepy. As a result, the Tion emissary of this generation hurried to the door. Sect Master, something big has happened, Tion said in panic, using his Mandarin that was full of Shandong accent. What's the matter? The old man opened his sleepy eyes and looked at the 7-feet-tall man in front of him. He asked in confusion. Oracle. The Jade Lake's Oracle has appeared. The Tion emissary was very excited. It was no wonder that this was the first time he had seen an oracle since he became an emissary of the Tion at the age of 15. Judging from the color of the oracle, it must have been sent by the mighty immortal Sankingyo. It's true. The old man wiped his wrinkled face and tried to make himself look more energetic. What did the oracle say? When he asked this question, the Tion emissary suddenly became silent, as if it was difficult for him to speak. What's the matter? Is it something difficult to accomplish? The old sect master's heart sank. In these years, under the impact of atheism and materialism, Rosuism had been declining. It was likely that people in the secular world had already forgotten about this once prominent sect. Correspondingly, the influence of Rosuism had plummeted. Now the sect's assets were only 3 shops on the east side of the street. These shops were the old sect master's hometown in name, but in reality, the secret headquarters of Rosuism had been forcibly dismantled and taken away. Oh, it's not that. Judging from the content, it seems to be just a sigh from the mighty immortal Sankingyo, the Tion emissary said hesitantly. Hey you little brat, you can't even speak clearly to me. If you continue like this, I'll ask your father to slap you. The old man said angrily. The oracle said. The Tion emissary carefully looked at the old man. Then he made up his mind and said honestly, damn, it actually worked. What does that mean? I don't know either. The two of them looked at each other and were confused for a long time. That, Su Shinxing leaned on the girl's head and said helplessly, I keep feeling that something is wrong. Teacher, what do you mean? And Xinghua was happily eating the crepe with the black cat on her head. When she heard Su Shinxing's words, she hurriedly swallowed the food in her bulging cheeks like a hamster and asked. I feel that this is not a date at all. But 10 years later, every time you say that you're taking me out on a date, it's just for fun? No, that's not what I meant. Wait, what is my relationship with you in 10 years? Teacher and student. What's with that suspicious pause? How could I lay my hands on a young girl? How much of a scum would I be 10 years later? Wait a minute, Xinghua is about 12 years old now. 10 years later, she will be 22 years old. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Oh, it's still too strange. By that time, I'll already be able to accept other people without any psychological barriers. Su Shinxing was a little confused. Hee, I'm just joking. The girl stuck out her pink tongue and licked off the cream on the corner of her mouth as she giggled. By the way, the person you like is Auntie Yen, right? What? Before Su Shinxing could recover from his shock, he was shocked by the girl's words. In the future, you blamed yourself for Auntie Yan's death for almost 10 years and never had a girlfriend. From the looks of it, the person you like is Auntie Yan, right? No, you're mistaken. Only then did Su Shinxing let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that the girl was just randomly guessing. If that's not the case, then apart from the fact that you have a cold personality, the only other option is to be gay. The little girl was shocked. That's not it. Why are there only 2 terrible options? Or rather, I don't see the slightest bit of respect for me as your teacher. Su Shinxing slapped the girl's head with a meatball. If you say such strange things again, I'll sharpen my claws on your head. Sorry. Please spare me. The girl giggled as she apologized. But not long after, she asked curiously, speaking of which, teacher, what do you plan to do next? What do you mean? Hasn't everything been resolved? Su Shinxing replied lazily. Next, as long as Qin Xingyan can borrow the artifact that can cut souls, the rest will be easy. No, I'm talking about the weasel monster in Crimson Clouds Mountain. About that, I can borrow a phrase once said by a great man to explain my thoughts. It's none of my business, by Yen Song. Didn't Einstein say that? That's about right. In any case, it had killed all the servants who killed that guy's son, so it was not his family's fault. If it went overboard, Su Xinxing wouldn't even need to do anything. The super administrator would naturally take care of it. You'll make girls unhappy if you're so calculative. A date? I feel like there's something wrong with this kind of date, Sensei muttered as she lay on my head. Oh, is it because I'm borrowing the appearance of my younger self in this era? But let me tell you, don't look at how flat I am right now. In the future I will become puff puff puff. What's with that strange onomatopoeia? Although you might not believe me, I'm definitely a lot older than the current Auntie Xingyan. I don't want to know such strange information. And that's not what I meant. If I have to say something, I'm the one that's wrong. By the way, Sissimo Lee's figure is still the same as it is now. That's great. Cough, no, remember not to say that in front of Emily, okay? Sensei pretended to warn me. Although Sis Emily herself doesn't seem to care. Understood. I clasped my fingers together and made a not-so-standard military salute. Sensei was silent for a while, then suddenly asked, Xinghua, do you have something on your mind? No, teacher, you're thinking too much. Although my heart was beating violently, I still tried my best to maintain a calm expression and replied with a smile. With the sacred flashing sword, there aren't many people in this world who can hurt me. Although it's only enough for one attack. Ah, and you clearly came back to change history, but you didn't help at all. Ah, she was already very concerned about this matter, and you actually added insult to injury. As expected, you're the same as the future. Sensei, you're such an unromantic person. However, just as I was silently cursing in my heart, Sensei's voice became slightly gentler. Thank you. If it wasn't for you, I definitely would have walked down the same path as you did in your timeline. And woo, damn it, I've clearly turned into a cat and I'm not the same age as the future's uncle, but why is Sensei's voice still so sweet? Speaking at such a close distance, I couldn't even stand properly. What's wrong? Sensei might have felt my footsteps wavering, so she asked with concern. No, nothing, I just want to go to the washroom. If you want to go to the washroom, I remember there's one around the corner. Then she moved to the washroom. Sensei, you can't peep. I took off Sensei's mask and placed it on the flower bed. What kind of eyes are you looking at me with? If you want to peep, you can only peep at me. I don't know what kind of eyes to look at you with anymore. I'm such an idiot. What do you mean by, you can only peep at me? It's like something an idiot would say. From Sensei's expression, she was definitely shocked. Since I didn't really need to go to the washroom, I just flipped the toilet lid over and sat on it like a chair. I covered my face with both hands and was so embarrassed that I wanted to die from the words I said in the heat of the moment. After a while, the heat on my face finally decreased to a normal level. Sigh, I can't go on like this. It's rare to have a date with Sensei. I let out a long sigh and summoned the shining sacred sword. I raised it up high towards the lamp above the cubicle. The shining silver blade was already faintly transparent. I don't have much time left. After sorting out my emotions, I went out to meet up with Sensei and then began the second round of the date. After getting rid of all the weird thoughts, even if it was just strolling around the shops, the date became very enjoyable. When the movie ended, because Sensei wasn't allowed to bring pets, Sensei snuck in. It was almost time. When I walked out of the movie theater, the sky was already orange. The setting sun was about to disappear from the horizon and the bright red clouds painted the most beautiful line in the sky. Sensei's Sakura apartment was located in the suburbs and we would pass by a suburban park on the way. At this time, the artificial lake in the suburban park was also dyed with the color of the setting sun. The sparkling water looked very beautiful. I put Sensei down on the fake mountain beside the artificial lake and then took 2 steps back towards the lake to face Sensei. He seemed to have realized something and looked at me seriously, waiting for me to speak. Sensei, I have to go. That's so sudden, I thought you would stay for a while. Sensei shook his head and said with a look of pity, the reason why I am able to stay in this timeline is because of the power of the shining sacred sword. However, this power is limited. I bit my lips and tried my best to calm my voice down. Moreover, if I don't leave, the me in this timeline will never be able to wake up. Although I have already said it, I still have to thank you again. Sensei looked down and said softly, although we have only known each other for a short time, I feel that you are a good person. But I have already known you for 10 years. So annoying, Sensei, you are still giving me the good person card at this time. I can't cry, I definitely can't cry in this place. Otherwise, wouldn't Sensei be worried? Sorry, but what I said is the truth. I am quite happy being with you. Me too. To be able to be with Sensei and have a final date. I am really happy. As Sensei in this era is too young. The more mature uncle version of Sensei 10 years later is more to my liking. Wah, your words really hurt me. Sensei started rolling on the fake mountain. It's not like that. No matter which Sensei, I like them the most. After a moment of silence, I looked up at Sensei. Sensei, actually, I like you. I like you the most. Actually, today is my birthday. In the end, I couldn't say it out loud. I could only reveal the same fake smile as before. Hey, why didn't you say so earlier? Sensei immediately became flustered. You didn't even have time to prepare a birthday present. No time. I lifted my hand to look and realized that my body was gradually disappearing from my fingertips. But it's already like this. In the end, Sensei helplessly gave me the cat bell around his neck. Goodbye. Finally, thank you again. My only student. Sensei smiled as he sat on the fake mountain and looked at me with a gentle gaze. Cats usually don't have much facial muscles, so they don't usually have much expression. However, Sensei is different. He has a very human expression on his cat face. At this moment, his expression overlapped with Sensei's 10 years later. Goodbye, Sensei. So painful. Traveling through time and space will cause damage to the soul. I already understood this when I went back in time 10 years ago. However, compared to the pain in my heart, the pain in my soul is nothing. After changing history, Anti-Xing Yen won't die. Not only will Sensei not disassemble his holy sword of the end, there will also be no reason for him to go back in time. That way, after Sensei helped my family cut off half of our souls, we will no longer have anything to do with each other. Naturally, I will no longer be Sensei's student. The time that I once had with Sensei will never happen again. From now on, teacher and I will be strangers who have nothing to do with each other. Hugh, if I had a body, I would definitely be crying by now. Even though I knew this would happen and Sensei told me before, I still chose to change history so that Sensei wouldn't have to suffer anymore. Why did it have to be me? I originally thought that I was mentally prepared, but I never thought that losing Sensei and losing all the ties I built over the past 10 years would be so painful. Why is it that I, as a singularity, have all the memories from the previous timeline? If I had known earlier, I would have confessed without any hesitation. At least I wouldn't have to return to the cold future without Sensei with such painful thoughts. Sensei, 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 I called out to him again and again, but I couldn't suppress the pain in my heart. In the next instant, my surroundings, including my body, returned. I was in the middle of a grassy clearing. Judging from the time displayed on the holographic billboard, I should have returned to 10 years later, to the day in the past. I had an impression of the surrounding buildings. No, it should be said that they were very familiar. You're joking, right? In the original era, this barren land should have been rented by Sensei in order to research how to cut off the timeline. With the help of the super administrative office, he should have built a dojo. This was also the place where Sensei and I spent the most time together. But now it was all gone. I opened my palm and held the brightly colored cat bell and the collar that still had Sensei's body temperature in my hand. Then, because of the baptism of time, the bell and the collar decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into a small pile of ashes. The last line of defense in my heart collapsed. I knelt in the grass, holding the ashes of my last connection with Sensei, and burst into tears. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. It was so painful that I couldn't breathe. Then I understood. After 10 years of first love, I had officially fallen out of love. Everything was gone. If I had known that it would be so painful, I wouldn't have known Sensei in the first place. No matter how painful it is, I can't forget Sensei. I will never admit that I didn't know Sensei before. I wiped away my tears and sniffed. Sensei must still be somewhere in this world. I have to go and find him. Then I have to establish a new bond. I can't just give up like this. I can't. I say, you're already an adult. I only said a few words and you're crying like this. Isn't it too exaggerated? At this moment, an incredulous voice came from beside me. It was a familiar voice that made me feel at ease. Sensei. Turning around, I saw Sensei, who was wearing a white coat as usual, standing there helplessly. How old are you? You're still crying like a kitten. He handed me a handkerchief and said in annoyance and amusement, Why are you here? I took the handkerchief and asked blankly, You can't have forgotten, right? Today is your birthday. Everyone is waiting for you at Sakura apartment. He patted my head. The temperature of his palm was the same as usual. It was so warm that I was intoxicated. You're my student that I'm proud of. Then he turned and walked in the direction of Sakura apartment. Although something had changed, there were still some things that hadn't. The impulse in my heart made me pull the corner of his shirt. What's wrong? Sensei turned around in confusion. Sensei, actually, this time, I must say it. Chapter 183. Senior, Fong Xiaoqing ran into the office with a flyer in her hand. What's the matter? Xiao Jingyi rubbed his eyes and said casually, Also, don't call me senior in the future. Just call me by my name. Comrade Xiao, you seem very tired. Fong Xiaoqing looked at Xiao Jingyi, who was about to turn into panda eyes, and asked curiously, What did you do last night? Comrade Fong, as a police officer, can you not be so nosy? Xiao Jingyi replied angrily. Since joining this special case investigation team, I don't feel that what I do has anything to do with the police. Fong Xiaoqing sighed helplessly, and then returned to the appearance of a gossipy girl just now. So what's wrong with you? That has increased again. Now there are almost 200 in my house. Xiao Jingyi yawned again and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. If this continues, I'll have to consider sleeping on the floor here. Although Su Xinxing got back the Zhenchuan seal from Fusang, that thing only slowed down the loss of spirit energy. It could only be regarded as a temporary effect, not a permanent solution. Therefore, the lost spirit energy still gathered in Xiao Jingyi's house under Su Feng's preset work. The final result of this series of events was that the number of monsters in Xiao Jingyi's house increased. Wow, that's really pitiful. Feng Xiaoqing cast a pitiful look at Xiao Jingyi. Although she hadn't been to Xiao Jingyi's house to feel how annoying those monsters were, occasionally one or two monsters would be mixed in with the things Xiao Jingyi brought. For example, a pen that thought of itself as Xiao Li's flying dagger and a lighter that jumped out to light itself when it saw a couple flirting. Just by looking at the behavior of those guys, she knew what kind of scene Su Shenxing's house was now. Stop, this kind of pitiful look makes me feel even worse. Xiao Jingyi waved his hand and blocked Feng Xiaoqing's line of sight. By the way, what are you holding in your hand? Although the way she changed the topic was a bit stiff, Feng Xiaoqing didn't want to dwell on the monster in Xiao Jingyi's house. She placed the flyer in her hand on Xiao Jingyi's table. I found it in the nearby Wanling Square. From a master teaches you the importance of guarding spirits. What kind of nonsense is this? Xiao Jingyi felt his headache getting worse. Although the layout of the flyer was beautiful, the color and content of the title made him feel like he was looking at a Jinkala advertisement. Under the title, the content was written in detail. To put it simply, the so-called master from Mei could see the guardian spirit behind everyone. Depending on the guardian spirit, everyone's personality, habits, and luck would be different. Meanwhile, this master could expend his own power to help others change their guardian spirits, thus increasing the other party's fortune. It's not that I want to say this, but how brainless can one be to be fooled by this kind of thing? After reading it patiently, Xiao Jingyi's eyebrows twitched, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But I heard that this is an unexpected hit? Feng Xiaoqing said helplessly. It seems that many old people in the city already regard this master as a god. Nowadays swindlers like to target the old. But even if that guy is really a swindler, it has nothing to do with our special case investigation team, right? Xiao Jingyi threw the flyer back on the table. Instead of giving this to me, you might as well give it to the criminal police unit. As long as this guy swindles 200,000 yuan, it's a huge fraud case. If he's a little more daring and swindles 1 million yuan, it's a huge fraud case. The problem is, that guy almost doesn't take money. Feng Xiaoqing's words made Xiao Jingyi stunned. He doesn't take money? Yes, it's free of charge and very few people read it every day. Looks like it's very serious, so many old people believe it. If it wasn't for the fact that this flyer is so urgent, I wouldn't have brought it to the office. Feng Xiaoqing nodded and told Xiao Jingyi what she knew. Sister, this master seems to have first appeared in Jiangjin half a month ago, but at first no one paid attention to him. It wasn't until a very unlucky person went through his so-called spirit exchange ceremony and really made a lot of money that people gradually went to him to try the spirit exchange. From the current situation, it seems that the effect after the spirit exchange is generally good, so gradually more and more people are chasing after that guy. According to what you said, it doesn't seem like it's all a swindler's trick. Xiao Jingyi touched the stubble on his chin that had not been shaved clean because of the razor's desperate resistance. He muttered to himself thoughtfully, if that's the case, it seems that we do need to investigate a little. But then he sighed again. At this time, the bureau chief actually took the second Xinxing to participate in some kind of work debriefing meeting and won't be back for 2 days. Can't you ask that very powerful friend of yours to help with this matter? Feng Xiaoqing continued to ask. She was undoubtedly referring to Su Xinxing. No way. At present, that guy is still a cat, and even if we don't care about this, I don't know why, but recently he's been particularly keen on taking in Li Tinghua's third daughter and Xinghua as a student. For this reason, Li Tinghua's entire family is planning to move to southern Chu. Xiao Jingyi had a pained expression on his face that said, I don't understand the world of supermen. He helplessly narrated, Miss Qin Xingyan hasn't returned yet. In Mo only Su Xinxing can order around. That new tenant of Sakura Apartments called Chihaya Fukuyama is from Fusang, so it's not very convenient to ask for help. Looking at it this way, only the two of us can investigate this matter. Is this really okay? The girl seemed to be somewhat uneasy. After all, she was also someone who had experienced supernatural events, so she naturally understood that some situations were very dangerous for ordinary people like them. It's fine because I have a countermeasure. Xiao Jingyi took out a sword hilt from his drawer. Oh, this is the Yuanrong sword from before? What about that Miss Sword Spirit? Fang Xiaoqing recognized it at a glance and asked in high spirits. She's sleeping inside. She said that when I need her, I just need to rub the surface of the sword hilt 3 times. Xiao Jingyi revealed a wry smile. Aladdin's magic lamp? Ignoring the girl's ridicule for the moment, Xiao Jingyi suddenly thought of something after taking out the Yuanrong sword. It seemed that the previous owner of the Emperor's sword was currently studying in Jiangjin's school. Chapter 184. Sigh. Qintua let out a long sigh. Ever since the incident with the Emperor's sword, he had been sent to Jiangjin by Ding Yang, who worshipped the immortal master like crazy. Although Jiangjin was not far from his hometown southern Chu, and it would take about 1.5 hours to get there by high-speed rail, the cost of the high-speed rail was not a small expense for someone like him who was cash-strapped. Of course, this was not the reason why Qintua sighed. Actually, he was quite satisfied with the current situation. Originally, he had been prepared to be put under house arrest by those people, but they had only warned him not to use the power of the Emperor's sword and had not restricted his personal freedom. Even if he wanted to leave Jiangjin, he only needed to inform the people in the super administration office. The explanation given to Qintua's parents was that Ding Yang, as the boss of a large company, had met Tu Wazi by accident. He felt that Tu Wazi was simple, honest and trustworthy. He wanted to nurture Tu Wazi well, so he sent Tu Wazi to study abroad. For this reason, not only did Ding Yang give Qintua's parents a sum of money, he also took care of Qintua's little brother's tuition. Qintua was quite grateful to that guy for this. Sigh. After another long sigh, the Emperor's sword spirit, who had been floating behind Qintua, could not stand it anymore. You are now the sword master of the Emperor's sword. How can you be so dispirited? You're too unbecoming. The sword spirit girl said unhappily with her hands on her hips. I'm not the type to study. I said I had 2 days off this time, but there were actually 12 pieces of homework. I'd rather run back to that haunted house and fight with the monsters there than do this kind of thing. Qintua looked exhausted. That kind of thing, can't you just write it down quickly? Get your spirits up. Don't mess around, you're not the one doing it. Of course it's easy for you to say, I'm not messing around, it's very easy. I don't believe you unless you do it for me. Let's do it. How can a problem of this level be difficult for me? Oh, so powerful. As expected of the sword spirit of the Son of Heaven's sword. Qintua applauded in admiration. Hee, Lord Swordmaster, you finally know the benefits of this emperor. This made the sword spirit girl, who was usually scolded by Qintua, very happy. She puffed out her flat chest proudly, completely not noticing that Qintua was showing a planned expression in a corner that she couldn't see. The two of them, or rather one human and one spirit, chatted as they walked. They planned to go to the supermarket to buy ingredients and then go to the apartment that Ding Yang had rented for them. Because he was afraid that the Emperor's sword would be exposed, Qintua did not live in the school dormitory. However, he did not feel that it was a pity. After all, those little brats in school who had not experienced the hardships of the world had a different outlook on life from him. Putting everything else aside, just his name alone had caused him to be teased many times, both openly and secretly, ever since he had transferred to this school. Little brother, please stop for a moment. Just as Qintua was waiting for the sidewalk to turn green, an old man who was dressed like a priest but was holding prayer beads in his hand. If one looked closely, one could see the Tai Chi 8 trigrams pattern on his clothes. He gave off a nondescript feeling as he called out to him from behind. Grandpa, what's the matter? Because of the recent cases of fake falls, Qintua quietly distanced himself from the other party. After confirming that he was currently within the surveillance camera's range, he responded to the other party. I see that, little brother, your forehead is full, your face is red, and your bones are exquisite. You are a 1 in a million good seedlings and your future is limitless. However, at this time, there is a wisp of black gas above your head that has not dissipated. I'm afraid that there is an ominous thing lingering around you, so I wanted to come over and make a good karma with you and give you some pointers. I know of a good tea house nearby. Why don't we go there and talk in detail? The old man did not seem to notice Qintua's vigilance towards him at all. He was still happily trying to curry favor with him. What? This old man actually dares to say that I am an ominous thing. Swordmaster, don't hold me back. If I don't kill him, I won't be called the Sword of Heaven. The sword spirit girl, who was originally in a good mood, immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, although she was originally floating in the air. She rolled up her long sleeves and pretended to hit the old man. However, she was scared back by Chintua's gaze. This made Chintua feel that he had taught her well. At the same time, he began to deeply reflect on whether he was usually too strict with this girl, so much so that a single gaze could scare her to this extent. Then he immediately switched to the simple and honest appearance of a country bumpkin. An embarrassed expression appeared on his incomparably simple face. "Oh, master, my mother said that I can't walk with strangers outside. You are treating me as an outsider. Meeting is fate, and naturally we are no longer strangers." The old man smiled slightly like a Maitreya Buddha. He did not look unhappy at all because of Chintua's refusal. But the more it was like this, the more Chintua did not want to have anything to do with him, regardless of whether this fellow could really vaguely see the sword spirit of the sword of heaven or was simply a liar. No, I have to listen to my mother." Thus he shook his head like a rattle drum. "Master, the light is green. I will leave first." After saying that, he ignored the other party's obstruction and ran directly across the road, disappearing around the corner at the fastest speed possible. Master, sword master, I realize that sometimes you are quite capable. Did you see that old man's expression just now? I am dying of laughter." The sword spirit girl held her stomach and laughed without caring about her image. If it were not for the fact that ordinary people could not hear her voice, perhaps everyone on the street would have been attracted to her. "Son of heaven, if you meet that old man in the future, try to keep a distance from him." After taking a few breaths, Chintua felt that he seemed to have neglected his training recently and reminded the girl. Wait, that kind of old man, I can defeat all of them with one hand. Strong, invincible. Don't worry about why, just do as I say," Chintua said firmly. Although he did not know if he had seen wrongly, but when Son of Heaven was about to hit the old man and his fist reached in front of the old man subconsciously shrank his head. Since there was such a reflex action, it meant that even if the old man could not see Son of Heaven, he could still vaguely feel Son of Heaven's existence. If it was just his own illusion, it would be fine, but if it was not an illusion, then it would be troublesome. These peaceful days had only lasted for a few days, and he did not want to be involved in any strange events again. At this time, the phone that Ding Yong had configured for him rang. By the way, for some reason, the ringtone was King Kong Sutra. Chintua took out the phone and clumsily unlocked it to look at the caller ID. Super Administrative Office, Shao Jingyi, so he decisively hung up the phone. "Who called?" the girl asked curiously. "Nothing, it was a wrong number," Chintua answered without hesitation. Chapter 185. Little girl, I see that you have delicate features and exquisite bones. You are a one-in-a-million martial arts prodigy. Coincidentally, I have some martial arts here. Why don't you take me as your master? I will leave the responsibility of saving the world to you. And Xinghua went out to buy soy sauce and came across a black cat sitting on the wall, trying to persuade her. This was not the first time she encountered such a situation. Although her mother said that the black cat was actually a very powerful person, little Xinghua felt that it was not real. Her mother also reminded her to keep a distance from the black cat. The reason was that little Xinghua did not understand the Lilicon concept. Thus she made a funny face at the black cat and stuck out her tongue. "No way." Then she quickly ran back home. After opening the door, little Xinghua found that her father was at home. He was in the living room talking to an uncle she did not know. The content was a little complicated for her, but she could vaguely tell that it was about moving house. To be honest, little Apricot was quite fond of Jiangjin. Although this city had many problems that most big cities had, the pace of life here was a little slow. Moreover, many of the citizens were very kind. Every time she saw riots, murders, and demonstrations on TV, she felt as if she was living in a different country from the people she saw on TV. After changing into indoor shoes, the girl struggled to carry the soy sauce bottle into the kitchen. Her mother was preparing dinner. From the amount of soy sauce, the uncle in the living room would probably stay for dinner. For some reason, the girl felt that the uncle gave her an uncomfortable feeling. "Thank you, Xinghua." Li Tinghua wiped her hands on her apron and patted the little girl's head. "I cooked some porridge. Bring it to your sister Wenhua." A few days after Wenhua and her sisters caused a ruckus in the city museum, she fell sick. She lay in bed with a fever. Her closest second sister, Barry, naturally stayed by her bedside to take care of her. Thus, the only one left to run errands for her parents was Xinghua. "Mother, is Sister Wenhua really okay?" Xinghua hesitated for a moment before asking in a worried voice. "Of course she is okay. This is a genetic disease. But Xinghua, don't worry. Soon we won't have to worry about this disease." Seeing her daughter's worried face, Li Tinghua hugged her and comforted her with a smile. Hearing her say this, little Apricot finally felt relieved. In her opinion, since her parents did not panic after her sister fell ill, there should be no problem. Just as little Apricot was about to tell her mother about what she had seen on the road, she noticed that her mother, who was usually kind and amiable, was looking out of the kitchen window with an annoyed expression. The little girl curiously followed her line of sight. Then he saw a black cat pressing its face against the glass. Due to the pressure from the glass, the cat's face looked both funny and scary. Li Tinghua sighed helplessly and let go of little Apricot Flower. She quickly walked to the window and opened it, allowing the black cat to roll in and fall into the pool from the window. "Help!" The black cat struggled in the pool. "Sigh." Li Tinghua rubbed her eyebrows and pulled the black cat out. Her face was full of distress. "Master Su, can you stop messing around?" Although she was not sure if this Master Su knew how to swim, Li Tinghua was certain that it would not be difficult for him to get out of the pool. At the very least, it would not be difficult for him to cut open the entire kitchen counter with his claws. "I think that being afraid of water is part of being a cat. If you don't like it, don't play." Because the black cat was wet, its body looked much thinner than when it was furry. At the same time, because of the contrast, its cat eyes, which were not small to begin with, looked even bigger and rounder. At this moment, it was obediently being carried by the other party. Its bright yellow cat eyes stared at Li Tinghua and said seriously, "No one is forcing you to be a cat." Even though she had not seen Su Shenxing's human form, Li Tinghua was certain that this cat was not his original form. "According to my estimation, I will be able to change back in 2 or 3 days." Su Shenxing did not mind and said proudly, "Is there anything to be proud of?" "No." Putting aside the meaningless conversation, Li Tinghua threw the black cat back to the ground. Su Shenxing tried to dry his fur while saying, "I heard the two over there say that you are moving?" As he said this, Su Shenxing used his tail to point in the direction of the living room. "That's right. If nothing unexpected happens, my husband will be promoted to become the manager of a branch company in southern Chu. Therefore our family will be following him." Because there was no need to hide it, Li Tinghua answered generously. Of course, the main reason was that a certain lolicon had the tendency to develop into a stalker. It was too dangerous for her daughter, so this matter could not be said. That would be very troublesome. Su Shenxing jumped onto the marble kitchen counter and squatted down in distress. Because if it is too far away, it will be very troublesome to teach the disciple. Please don't secretly decide to take Apricot Flower as a disciple in such a serious manner. Speaking of which, we are moving to avoid you. You should at least pay attention to it. Li Tinghua felt somewhat powerless to ridicule. But for the sake of her daughter's happiness, she still had to retort. However, the following conversation might be a bit more incisive. In order to not let her daughter be affected, so, "Apricot Flower, bring the porridge up. Otherwise it will get cold." Li Tinghua took a step back in order to advance. "Also, call your father and his friend over for dinner." As long as there were outsiders, Su Shenxing would not speak and would only obediently pretend to be a cat. Therefore, as long as the stranger came over to take a seat, Su Shenxing would not have a seat. Although Apricot Flower was very interested in the conversation between the black cat and her mother, she still obediently picked up the porridge bowl and walked towards the stairs behind the living room. As she passed by the living room, the girl discovered that the conversation between her father and the strange uncle seemed to have changed. It had turned into all kinds of terms that she could not understand. When the uncle saw little Apricot Flower, his eyes lit up. He pointed at her and said, "You see, actually it's fine to bring your daughter along. In any case, the school is paying for it. It's not bad to let her experience it." It seemed that their conversation had turned to her. Apricot Flower lowered her head, not letting the other party see her face. Then, like a wisp of smoke, she ran upstairs. Chapter 186. Even if he didn't answer the phone, Tu Wazi was still caught by Xiao Jingyi. After all, he had just arrived and there were only a few places he could stay, so it was normal for him to be blocked. Although the Son of Heaven sword had a certain degree of sensing ability to the Yuan Rong sword, allowing Tu Wazi to leave before Xiao Jingyi and the others arrived, it was meaningless. He didn't think that his legs could outrun the other party's police car. So why did you come to find me? Because it was inconvenient to talk outside. Xiao Jingyi specially took Chen Tua to the office of the Special Case Investigation Team. I don't know if you've heard of someone from the United States recently. Qigong or metaphysics. Anyway, he's a master in that field. Xiao Jingyi touched his chin and asked Chen Tua. No answer complete. Can I go home now? No. I still need you to do me a small favor. Do I have the right to refuse? I'm sorry, Mr. Policeman, I feel that an outsider like me shouldn't get involved in this kind of thing. My life is already so difficult. The local students look down on me. I'm stupid and my grades aren't good. If the people in school see me being arrested by you and brought to the police station, I might as well drop out of school. So Chen Tua immediately turned on his movie king mode, crying and complaining with snot and tears. Not long after graduation, Fang Xiaoqing, who was relatively inexperienced, was immediately moved to tears and sniffled. But Xiao Jingyi stared at this little rascal with a fake smile. When Su Shenxing brought this little guy to Jiangjin, he took the time to investigate this little guy's life. In addition to Ding Yang's understanding of this little guy and Tu Wazi's way of doing things, Xiao Jingyi had long understood that this seemingly rustic guy was smart and cunning. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't be fooled by Earthchild's cries. If your classmates misunderstand you, I will contact Ding Yang to help you change schools. I guarantee that the teaching environment and learning atmosphere will be much better than the one you're in now. If your results are not good, it's because you didn't do enough questions. Don't worry, I have the 5 years of college entrance examination, 3 years of mock papers exercise book for every subject. It's really an essential medicine for the exam. Take it and do it. Don't thank me. I will contact some tutors to tutor you regularly and check your progress. Chen Tua immediately put away his aggrieved face and said seriously, Ahem, it's all thanks to you that I can continue to go to school. If it's just a small favor, there's no problem. The speed at which his expression changed even made Fang Xiaoqing, who wanted to be a caring big sister to comfort him, dumbfounded. Oh, there's no problem now? Chapter 187. Oh. Jiangjin actually has such a place. Ding Yang stood in a forest and sighed softly. This was the forest to the west of Jiangjin city. In fact, this place was no longer within the boundaries of Jiangjin. It was close to the Zhifei mountain district at the back. It was originally a development zone. For this reason, the villagers in this small mountain village had moved away. However, recently this place seemed to have been designated as a nature reserve, so the development plan was put on hold. Until now, it still maintained its original appearance. Perhaps because it was closer to the sea, this forest was not like the forests on the mainland. 90% of it was made up of trees and shrubs. It looked very dense. It was more similar to the temperate rainforests in humid England. The towering trees were covered with a thick coat of emerald green moss. The ground was also covered with carpet-like moss, making the whole forest look as beautiful as an oil painting. At the edge of the forest, some traces of the original residence could be seen. The old wooden house was also covered with moss and creepers. In the small yard separated by the few remaining fences, there were broken children's tricycles, stone tables and parasols. These things were all wrapped in moss. The scenery as far as the eye could see was completely worthy of the word green field. The feeling of being in a fairy tale world was enough to make people forget the dilapidated wooden house itself. Now this was the gathering place designated by the unifying Church of the Universe. When the time came, someone would take them to the campsite. This group of swindlers is quite good at finding places. Xiao Jingyi could not help but sigh. But then again, I have to thank you for your help. Otherwise it would not have been easy to sneak in. In order to win the trust of the group of swindlers, Ding Yang took the 3 of them to spend a lot of money. They spent nearly $500,000 to make the swindlers believe that Ding Yang was not a police officer. They treated Ding Yang and his group as examples of stupid people with a lot of money. And it was not only Ding Yang. Fang Xiaoqing was also from a wealthy family. Although she did not usually show much, the occasional disdain for money made the swindlers feel more at ease. They were sure that they had hooked a fat sheep. By the way, the reason why Xiao Jingyi wanted to find Ding Yong to pretend to be rich instead of using Fang Xiaoqing's money was purely because of his pathetic self-esteem as a man. After all, once the swindler was caught, the money would be returned. Therefore, Xiao Jingyi was not afraid that Ding Yang's money would be wasted. Ding Yong, on the other hand, had been stuck at a bottleneck recently. When he heard Xiao Jingyi mention this matter, he immediately slapped his head and thought, this is definitely the main storyline for the protagonist to earn merits and achievements. Maybe he can even have a fortuitous encounter and improve his skills. Moreover, Qin Tua, his comrade who had gone through life and death with him, was also here. Therefore he came to help without hesitation. Of course, even though he said that, Ding Yong did not really care much about this mission. With his current level of strength that was half a step into the cultivation world, as long as he did not really encounter people from the cultivation world, he could almost do whatever he wanted among ordinary people. He really did not care about a few cultists like Cricket. Little brother, what are you doing? After chatting with Xiao Jingyi for a while, Ding Yong noticed that Qin Tua was squatting on the ground. Seemed like he was doing something. He could not help but ask curiously. Picking mushrooms. Qin Tua shook the 2 plastic bags in his hands. The ones in the white bag are edible and the ones in the red bag are poisonous. Although Qin Tua was not really a child who grew up in the mountains, he was still the most traditional village child. He knew a lot about mushrooms under the influence of the adults in the village. I can understand picking edible mushrooms, but why are you picking the poisonous ones? Xiao Jingyi asked doubtfully. To poison them, of course. Qin Tua shrugged and answered matter-of-factly, isn't that master very powerful? If that's the case, there must be a way to deal with food poisoning, right? What he meant was that if he could not even deal with food poisoning, what kind of master was he? After experiencing this, there should be a lot of believers who would no longer blindly follow the so-called master. They should be able to wake up. No, I remember that he specializes in guardian spirits. This food poisoning of yours doesn't seem to match his specialty. Although Xiao Jingyi was somewhat moved by this, he still felt that something was wrong. Hey, you guys are breaking the law. Fang Xiaoqing complained to this group of people who had little awareness of the law with an embarrassed expression. Anyway, let's take them first. It's better to be safe than sorry. After collecting enough mushrooms, Qin Tua stuffed the bags into his pants to prevent them from being discovered by the scammers who came to pick them up. Xiao Jingyi looked at his movements and wanted to say something, but after thinking about it carefully, it did not seem wrong to put the mushrooms in his pants. Speaking of which, why are we camping this time? Ding Yong watched their interaction with interest for a while before asking. Didn't I tell you? Xiao Jingyi scratched his head and realized that he had really been too busy to mention this matter, so he explained, those scammers said that it's to understand the true meaning of the universe and nature, so they organized this camping activity. Only the fat sheep and the most devout believers can participate. While they were talking, not far away, 2 burly men dressed in priestly attire walked over. Qin Tua was stunned when he saw them, and then he remembered that he seemed to have met a guy dressed in similar attire by the roadside 2 days ago. Xiao Jingyi and Ding Yong looked at each other. The 2 of them had a lot of special experiences. Xiao Jingyi was involved in most of the cases because of Su Shenxing, so their experience and insight were naturally not comparable to ordinary people. They could almost tell that the 2 burly men were martial artists at a glance, and their faces were full of murderous intent. They were afraid that they had injured or even killed people before. Although Qin Tua was quick-witted and had excellent acting skills, he was still lacking in this aspect. He only felt that the 2 burly men were not to be trifled with. As for Fang Xiaoqing, who did not understand the dangers of the world, she did not have any thoughts about it at all. After confirming the identities of Ding Yong and his group, the 2 men began to lead the way in front. Although the scenery in the forest was beautiful, it had been like this for a long time and eventually people would get tired of it. They did not know how long they had been walking, but when no one was in the mood to enjoy the scenery, the scene in front of them suddenly opened up. A small campsite appeared in front of them. Xiao Jingyi looked into the distance and saw a little girl with a black cat. He could not help but look happy and he turned his head to Qin Tua. It seems that your mushrooms are not needed. Chapter 189. Cars couldn't pass through the dense forest, so when a group of people came in from the entrance of the camp, if the two pieces of wood stuck in the ground could be counted as a door, it meant that someone had probably been tricked into coming here. Not counting Xiao Jingyi's group, there were nearly 1,000 people gathered here. Even if only half of them were tricked, there were still more than 500 people. Although they already knew that a lot of people had been tricked this time, the number of fat sheep and hardcore believers had completely exceeded Xiao Jingyi's expectations. So when Qin Tua looked at Xiao Jingyi with a "you city people are stupid" look, even Xiao Jingyi blushed a little. What was worse was that even if Xiao Jingyi didn't watch much TV and wasn't very interested in politics and current affairs, he could still recognize that there were many celebrities in Jiangjin's political and business circles among the people present. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that these people had disappeared together was probably enough to set off a huge wave in Jiangjin. Wait, the people who were just surrounded by those people in religious clothes don't seem to be new victims. At this time Feng Shaoqing suddenly said softly. So the few of them looked at each other and then began to approach the door with tacit understanding. Although those burly men who looked more like bodyguards than believers intentionally or unintentionally surrounded the people to prevent others from spying on them, they were only amateurs after all. For Xiao Jingyi and Feng Shaoqing, who had undergone some training in the police academy, they were still very inexperienced. Although Ding Yang hadn't undergone special training in this area, he had also had a fortuitous encounter. His bodily functions couldn't be compared to ordinary people, including his vision. As for Qin Tua, well, this guy didn't even think about spying on the people who had come. He was purely surrounded by the people around him. The person who came was a woman who wrapped herself up tightly. From the more obvious secondary sexual characteristics on her chest and her long hair, it was certain that she was at least not a cute boy. After observing for a while, the group of people returned to the vicinity of Su Xinxing as if nothing had happened in order to avoid being targeted by the surrounding believers. By the way, at this time Su Xinxing was pretending to be a normal house cat, using an innocent look to catch butterflies. "Did you find anything?" Xiao Jingyi asked in a low voice. "I heard the believers around me calling her master." Ding Yang, who had already immersed himself in the role and treated himself as the main character, rubbed his nose and replied solemnly, "I'm afraid she's the main character this time. Do you need me to poison you?" Qin Tua pulled open his pants and pretended to take something out. However, the angry Feng Shaoqing punched him to the ground with a red face. "Let's wait and see. I have a feeling that there's something wrong with that master." Ding Yang rubbed his nose and pretended to be deep in thought. "Is your nose itching?" Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but ask. "No, I just think that as the main character I need a signature action that's easier to remember. I think this move is already too common. Why don't you try something like a wicked smile or a cold smile?" Xiao Jingyi said seriously. "I tried it alone in the office, but I couldn't make an evil smile even when my face was cramping." At that time there was an employee who came in to report on their work. Ding Yang sighed and looked embarrassed. "I'm afraid I'll never forget the way he looked at me with that retard expression. I'm sorry for your loss." Xiao Jingyi was dumbfounded for a long time before he finally squeezed out this sentence. "It's okay. Later I sent that guy to clean the toilet. I just like to see him not happy with the job but unwilling to give up the high salary of my company and not want to resign." It seemed that this guy was not very generous. "Ahem, can we continue to talk about the master?" Feng Shaoqing coughed dryly and asked them to quickly get back on track. "Although we haven't thought about this according to the current situation, it's not incomprehensible that the master, as a key figure, would come here." Xiao Jingyi quickly and seriously analyzed the situation. After all, this can be regarded as the gathering place of all the backbones and ATMs of the cult. If the master doesn't come out to preside over the overall situation, as long as some of the fat sheep come back to their senses, who knows what kind of trouble will occur. Qin Tua, who was not listening carefully at all, nodded his head perfunctorily and pretended to agree on the surface. At the same time he inwardly thought to himself, "This guy will definitely be henpecked in the future." But we know too little about this cult. Without knowing what exactly they want to do, we can only try to deal with them as they come. Because Ding Yang and the others took the initiative to come into contact with this cult, they had not seen the cult's methods of bewitching people with their own eyes. On the contrary, they knew relatively little about this cult. And this cult's doctrine was very characteristic of the Chinese dynasty's copycat doctrine. It was a hodgepodge of the doctrines of several religions. When Xiao Jingyi flipped through their religious propaganda pamphlets, he even found that the guy who wrote this was probably muddle-headed. He copied the parts of the Quran without even changing Allah. He was really not afraid of being called Allah. Xiao Jingyi did not have any opinions about this. If there were only 2 or 3 of them, he would probably be a little nervous about being in the enemy's camp. But after he found out that Su Xinxing, who looked like a kitten on the outside but was even more powerful than Godzilla on the inside, he did not feel much about it. At worst, he would first make a move and wipe out all the cultists here. As for the celebrities, he would bribe Su Xinxing with a family bucket. Then he would use amnesia physics to deal with it. Then he would submit a self-reflection and everything would be fine. Sorry. Just as they were secretly discussing how to deal with this, a tall priest came up to them and gave them a fright. "Excuse me, is Mr. Ding Yang here?" "Yes, I'm here." Ding Yang understood that the real show was about to begin. He immediately stood up and smiled wickedly. Mr. Ding Yang, is your face okay?" the priest asked with concern. "It's okay, just a cramp, just a cramp." Ding Yang realized that he really could not make the standard expression of the main character of the righteous cultivation world. He was a little dejected. "Oh, that's good." Although the burly priest still could not get over Ding Yang's twisted expression, he still said according to the script, "The master is free now. If you don't have any questions, can you come with me?" "Then my friends." Ding Yang looked at Xiao Jingyi and the others and asked without revealing anything. "Sorry, the master only wants to see you." The burly priest replied without hesitation. After all, it was only Ding Yang who had donated the money. Xiao Jingyi and the others had only come because of him, so it was normal that the master did not want to see them. So Ding Yang thought for a moment, then nodded and agreed to meet the so-called master. Chapter 190. I'm sorry it took me so long to meet you. The meeting place was in a dark green tent that looked like a yurt. Ding Yang thought it would be dark inside, but when he walked in, he realized that he had been overthinking. There was almost no light source, but the tent was as bright as day. This strange contrast even made people feel unreal for a moment. So that was how it was. She was using this method to emphasize that she had supernatural powers and make the guest waver so that she could have the upper hand in the meeting later. Although Ding Yang did not see what the other party was doing, he could still vaguely guess what the other party was trying to do. In addition, there was a smell similar to sandalwood in the tent. Ordinary people might just ignore it as sandalwood, but Ding Yang could clearly feel that the flow of true yuan in his body had slowed down slightly. It was not because of the fragrance, but because it was closer to the feeling of calming down. For ordinary people, such a state would cause them to be calm or even a little lazy. In this state, no matter how hot-tempered a person was, it would be easier for them to accept the opinions of others. They would also quietly change their perception or attitude toward a certain matter because they did not want to refute the other party's words. Even if there were no other methods, just the combination of these two and a good eloquent mouth was enough to make an ordinary swindler successful. For Ding Yang, who also had a certain degree of supernatural powers, in the early days of his business, he had used many similar methods that could not be seen in the light. Because of this, he had accumulated a considerable amount of wealth and connections in a short time. This was a very interesting phenomenon. Most of the rich people in this country were more superstitious than ordinary people. Because my schedule was quite full. I believe you know that I can only meet a few people every day. The master, who was sitting cross-legged behind a short table, said in a low voice. Although her voice was a little neutral and her tone was a little strange, if one listened carefully, one could still hear the unique gentleness of a woman. Probably to strengthen her sense of authority, she used this deliberately mystifying way of speaking. "It's okay, I understand your difficulties," Ding Yang said perfunctorily as he commented in his heart. He followed her instructions and sat down on the cushion in front of her desk so that the two of them could face each other. This made the smell of sandalwood even stronger. Ding Yang, whose 5 senses were much sharper than ordinary people, could not help but frown. However, it was also because of this that Ding Yang was finally able to see the man's face under the hood. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. It was the face of a very ordinary middle-aged woman. If one had to describe it, it might be more common than the senior expert he had met in the haunted mansion. To Ding Yang's surprise, the man's eyes looked dull and lifeless as if he was blind. However, judging from the master's actions after he saw her at the door, she should be able to see. Then may I ask, where did you hear about me, Mr. Ding Yong? Before Ding Yong could continue to observe and find any clues, the woman asked first. With the help of magic, Ding Yong was not afraid of this so-called master. He answered casually, I heard it from a friend of mine. I heard that you can help people change their guardian spirits and make them more lucky, right? That's right, but from what I see, Mr. Ding Yong, with your luck, I don't think you need my help. The master continued in a deep voice. It seemed that this woman had already investigated him. Ding Yong thought in his heart. However, this was to be expected. If it was not for the thorough investigation, these cultists would not have brought him and his group to this place so easily. Master, you should know that I used to be a robber before I became rich, right? So, Ding Yong started to make up a half-truth. Although I've made a lot of money because of this, I've been having trouble sleeping lately. I think it must be because I was targeted by something unclean when I was fighting. Master, if you can help me get a new guardian spirit to solve this problem, I'll be very grateful to you. Ding Yong waved his hand and took out an unfilled check. He made an expression that said, money is not a problem, I am so poor that I only have money left. He believed that no swindler would not be interested in this. Come, let me see if you are a swindler. Just as Xiao Jingyi and the others were getting impatient, Ding Yong walked out of the tent. How is it? Thus, they hurriedly surrounded him, being careful of the priests who looked like bodyguards. At the same time, they asked Ding Yong, what happened to that master? It's a real master. That's amazing. Ding Yong seemed to be in shock. He looked like he was still in a daze as he kept muttering to himself, unbelievable, this is unbelievable. Your hand is cut. Fang Xiaoqing noticed that there seemed to be a small cut on Ding Yang's fingertip. Drops of blood were dripping down. It's okay. Ding Yong said as if he did not feel anything. It was probably cut by some sawtooth grass. I was wondering why you were so distracted. Is that master so beautiful that he charmed you? Qin Tua unhappily patted Ding Yang's trousers. You're not allowed to speak ill of the great master. Forget it, I'm tired. I need to go back and experience it. Ding Yong roared impatiently, and then walked towards the tent that the church had assigned to them absent-mindedly. After he entered the tent, Xiao Jingyi looked at the other two in disbelief. What's wrong with this guy? He couldn't have really been charmed by the beauty, right? I don't think so. Fang Xiaoqing said uncertainly. I'm afraid that something unexpected has happened. Qin Tua pulled on Xiao Jingyi's shirt and said softly, let's go to a place where there's no one. Then they carefully avoided the sight of the cultists and hid in the forest outside the campsite. Earthchild, did you find anything? After making sure that there were no priests around, Xiao Jingyi asked impatiently. Ding Yong has practiced some strange martial arts. Although his body is not invulnerable, a normal knife would not be able to cut through his skin. Do you really think that sawtooth grass could hurt him? Qin Tua and Ding Yong had gone through the haunted tomb together. They were much closer than Xiao Jingyi and the rest, so they knew more about Ding Yong than Xiao Jingyi and the rest. Then how did he get hurt? That small cut on his fingertip doesn't look like it was left from a fight. Fang Xiaoqing was puzzled by Qin Tua's words. She had to describe it. That kind of cut was more like a child accidentally cutting his finger when he was sharpening a pencil with a utility knife. If Ding Yong had really fought with the master, there should not have been such a wound. No, if you think about it carefully, it's easy to get the answer. Qin Tua sighed. There are only two people in the tent. Even if we use the method of elimination, we can know that it was not caused by the master. Then isn't it only Ding Yong himself? If he used his fingernail, he should have been able to cut his finger. When I went up to him, I looked at his fingernail. There was indeed some blood stain under his thumbnail. Wait a minute, isn't that even more strange? Why did he cut his own finger? Fang Xiaoqing still could not understand the logic behind it. She looked confused. On the other hand, Xiao Jingyi seemed to understand the meaning behind Qin Tua's words. His face gradually darkened. I'm afraid that he wanted to leave us a message. We were all outside and could have done it with a shout, but he needed to use this method. I'm afraid this is going to be troublesome. He explained to Fang Xiaoqing, then paused. And the most important problem is that we don't know what message he left. No, in fact, I've already gotten the message he left. However, Qin Tua gave them a surprise. He raised his hand and there was a small paper ball in his hand. Where did you get this? Xiao Jingyi asked in surprise and joy. When that guy, Ding Yong, came out of the tent, one of his trousers was slightly rolled up unnaturally, so I pretended to be dissatisfied and went up to pat his trousers. After that, the thing that was originally clamped inside naturally fell out. Chin Tua threw the paper ball indifferently and replied, "This is it." After spreading out the paper, they found that it was actually a check. However, there was neither a signature nor an amount on it. Instead, there were 2 words written in blood. Because it might have been written by Ding Yong in a hurry, the handwriting was very messy. Xiao Jingyi and the others took a long time to recognize it. The first word was I, but this word was crossed out by a diagonal line. The second word was ghost. What does Ding Yong want to tell us with this? Fang Xiaoqing looked at Chin Tua without thinking. This little guy's behavior just now made the female police officer have an inexplicable expectation of him. This naturally made Xiao Jingyi a little jealous. Therefore Xiao Jingyi spoke first. Although I'm not sure what the word ghost means, the meaning of the word I in front is very clear. Crossing out the word I was equivalent to not me. Perhaps when Ding Yong wrote this word, he had already expected that when he walked out of the tent he would no longer be himself. Then that ghost, could it be that he was possessed by a ghost? Fang Xiaoqing thought of the ghost that she and Xiao Jingyi had encountered before and couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 191. When Xinghua was shaken awake by her father, it was still dark outside the tent. The little girl looked at her father with sleepy eyes. Her originally long hair had become messy due to her bad sleeping posture, curling up into a pile of strands. "What's the matter, Dad? Is it dawn already?" She rubbed her eyes and asked, half awake. "Shu, lower your voice. Put on your clothes and let's get out of here." Dadan whispered. Originally he was only skeptical about this so-called religion. However, because many business partners treated the master as a distinguished guest, even if he didn't believe it in his heart, in order to make a comeback he didn't want to embarrass them, so he pretended to be as devout as them. However, after coming to this so-called camp he felt that something was wrong. This suspicion completely broke out after meeting an old friend of his. Dadan's old friend had a big background. It was said that he could talk and laugh with the big bosses of Zongnanhai. However, he was also a person who was fastidious. When Dadan was in trouble he didn't stand on the sidelines like other people. Instead he helped Dadan, which gave Dadan the capital to make a comeback. Otherwise, Dadan would probably still be in prison for various reasons. However, after meeting his old friend here today, Dadan felt that something was wrong. The other party didn't have his usual shrewd and capable appearance. He worshipped the mysterious master very much. It was completely different from the previous kind but arrogant appearance. It was incredible. After that, Father suddenly realized that his business partners seemed to have the tendency to become like this. It was just that this change was subtle and gradual, so the more familiar people were with those people, the more difficult it was for them to notice this change. On the contrary, because this old friend's life had no intersection now, and they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Dadan suddenly felt that something was wrong. There was no doubt that something was wrong with this strange religion for such a situation to occur. Whether it was an alternative MLM nest or a simple cult, in short, it was definitely not a good thing. Therefore Papan was careful. During the day he pretended that he didn't notice anything. He only used the excuse of collecting firewood for the bonfire to wander around the campsite. In fact, he was secretly memorizing the surrounding environment and escape routes. When night came he would take in Xinghua and escape from this damned place together. "What's wrong?" And Xinghua, who was wearing bare pajamas, tilted her head and asked in a daze. "There's no time to explain. Anyway, let's get out of here first." Dadan was vigilant outside, praying that they wouldn't be discovered by the cult members who were on night watch. And Xinghua was an obedient child. After realizing that her father wasn't joking, most of her sleepiness immediately dissipated. She got into the thin towel quilt and changed her clothes. But after that she suddenly pulled her father's hand in a panic. "Dad, Xiaohei's cat is missing. Don't care about the black cat now, let's go first." Because Papa was just an ordinary person, Su Xinxing had never talked to him, so he naturally didn't know that the black cat was actually his daughter's bodyguard. "But Mom said that I must be with him this time," and Xinghua frowned and her little face was full of worry. It seemed that she was afraid of being scolded by her mother. It's okay, it's just a Xiao Hei cat. When we go back I'll help you buy another one on the way. Dadan said casually. In his opinion that Xiao Hei cat was really nothing special, and it seemed to have a tendency to shed fur. It must be troublesome to take care of it. The reason why his wife told his daughter so was probably because she didn't want his daughter to run around and take care of the cat. Although Xinghua still had some doubts about this, she still decided to listen to her father in the end. Together with her father, they secretly left the tent under the cover of the dark night and walked into the forest, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. The advantage of this kind of moss-covered woodland was that almost all the ground was occupied by moss, so there were few bushes. It was easier to walk and it was not so easy to trip and obstruct. The disadvantage was that there were no bushes, so the vision was very wide. If they didn't keep a certain distance, it was easy to be seen from afar. The forest at night was not as hot as it was during the day. The whistling wind passed through the trees and was stretched into a strange and sharp whistling sound. The canopy rustled because of this, making people instinctively feel afraid in the darkness. After running for an unknown amount of time, Papa N was still fine, just a little out of breath, but Xinghua couldn't run anymore. It was simply impossible to expect an ordinary 4th-grade little girl to finish a 5-kilometer directional cross-country run in the woodland. Dad, can we rest for a while? The girl asked, panting. Dadan thought about it and finally felt that it was not safe. Good girl, hold on. No, if you really can't run anymore I'll carry you. Then he squatted down with his back facing Xinghua. However, at this moment, a male voice sounded from behind. Where are you two going? Dad An's heart suddenly sank. He recognized this voice. It was the voice of the priest who came to his house and invited him to join this camping trip. He also wanted Xinghua to come with him. How could this be? They had already run for so long. Even if they were conservative, they should have run almost half the distance. When they left the campsite, he confirmed that they did not alert anyone. So how did this guy catch up? It was summer, but Dadan felt as if he was in an ice cave. An inexplicable sense of fear gripped his heart. He couldn't even make a sound. If it wasn't for the fact that he was in front of his daughter, he would have collapsed to the ground because of the overwhelming fear in his heart. Don't be nervous, I'm just reminding you. It's late at night. It's not good to run around the campsite and disturb everyone's rest. Isn't that right, Mr. N? The priest said with a smile, but that smile made Dadan feel even more gloomy. Campsite, around? Dadan heard this and looked forward. Then his pupils suddenly dilated. His face was full of disbelief. Although he couldn't see clearly because of the dark sky, he could still vaguely see the outline of the campsite in front of him. No. Dadan fell into chaos. He had already observed it during the day. When he came to the campsite, he deliberately and quietly left marks on some trees to prevent himself from getting lost. When he ran just now, he definitely ran according to the marks, and he definitely ran more than half the distance. So what was going on now? Was all his previous efforts all in vain? Vaguely, he remembered something a male friend once said when he was young. "NZ, have you heard of ghosts going around walls?" "Sorry, I don't believe in superstitions." "It's not superstition. I heard that there really is such a thing. I was walking on a familiar path, but in the blink of an eye, I found myself in another place. This is the so-called ghosts going around walls. Is this the reason why you were in the ladies' room before?" How should he put it? He didn't know why, but after thinking about this, Dadan inexplicably felt that he had calmed down a lot. Ghosts going around walls? Mr. N, the priest finally stopped smiling and began to slowly walk toward Dadan. Sometimes, knowing too much isn't a good thing. If it was a fight, Dadan compared his physique with the other parties and found that he seemed to have some advantages. In the past, in order to train his body, he also practiced Jeet Kune Do for a period of time. If he was prepared, he could still use some basic fighting skills. If he could knock this guy down at the beginning, he might be able to escape without alerting too many people. So he pretended to be afraid and began to wait for the other party to approach his attack range. When the other party approached, Dadan smelled a strong smell of cologne. This made him frown involuntarily. When this guy went to his house to invite him to participate in this strange campsite, he didn't have such a strong smell of cologne on him. Was it to repel insects or something? But he had never heard of cologne having that kind of effect. Soon, Dadan noticed that something was wrong. Although the ambergris in the cologne could numb people's sense of smell to a certain extent, so cologne was quite effective against body odor. Dadan didn't know if it was because the smell was too strong or for other reasons, but Dadan still smelled a trace of strange odor mixed in the cologne. Dadan, who had been exposed to this smell because of some things, suddenly turned pale. Corpse odor. It was like the smell of rotting corpses after opening a cloth bag that had been soaked in water for several days. It didn't come from anywhere else. Without a doubt, the source of the corpse odor was the short and fat man in front of him. When he came to his house yesterday, the other party was still a normal human, but now, standing in front of him was a moving corpse. Are you kidding me? Dadan felt that his daily life seemed to have collapsed. Cultists, ghosts, moving corpses, a series of things that would never appear under normal circumstances, now appeared in front of him in one breath. If it wasn't for the idea of protecting his daughter like the last pillar supporting his rationality, Dadan might have fallen into an unstable state of madness due to the sharp decrease in rationality. But even so, he still felt a burst of despair. How could he beat this kind of monster? No, if he risked his life he might be able to delay it for a while. As long as Xinghua could escape. Papa and took a deep breath. He did not want to think about how a fourth-grade girl could escape from a forest full of cultists. Deceiving himself, he forced himself to focus on the person in front of him. Mustering his last bit of courage, he shouted out loud. Hey. As long as I'm alive, I will never let you touch a hair on my daughter. Chapter 192. On the other side of the campsite, Su Xinxing was yawning as he listened to Xiao Jingyi and the others describe the situation they encountered. After confirming that Ding Yang had indeed met with a mishap, Xiao Jingyi did not continue to let Chen Tua and the others take the risk. He planned to let Su Xinxing deal with this matter directly. Su Xinxing listened to him patiently, then asked, "Then how do you plan to solve the problem of Ding Yang?" Xiao Jingyi heard this and could not help but fall silent. Indeed, for Su Xinxing, it would not be difficult to destroy the evil cult's nest. But what about Ding Yang, who was killed inside? Could it be that he was going to continue being possessed like this? There will always be a way. As long as the possessed ghost is removed, there will be no problem. If he wanted to find an excuse, Xiao Jingyi could easily come up with a bunch of them. Based on his understanding of Su Xinxing, even if Su Xinxing was not satisfied with his answer, he would definitely take action to eliminate the evil cult in the end. But even so, Xiao Jingyi still couldn't come up with an excuse that seemed to be reasonable. Because in the worst-case scenario, killing the so-called master might be equivalent to killing Ding Yang. For Xiao Jingyi, who yearned for justice and was even admitted to the police academy to become a police officer, this was not an acceptable answer. Sometimes for some people, conscience was a burden that they could never abandon. That's it. If you haven't made up your mind, it's better to think about what you're pursuing first. Su Xinxing stared at Xiao Jingyi, whose expression was constantly changing like an amoeba. Finally he sighed, turned around, wagged his tail and left everyone's sight. He once again disappeared into the darkness. Only his indifferent voice sounded as usual. The father and daughter left the tent that I protected. During this period of time, they might attract the attention of most people in the evil cult. How troublesome. After a long period of silence, Xiao Jingyi spoke softly to the darkness where not a single cat was present. Thanks, old Su. Naturally, he knew Su Xinxing's intention. If Ding Yang was unable to recover after the cult was uprooted, Xiao Jingyi would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. Therefore, Su Xinxing deliberately created this opportunity for Xiao Jingyi to find a glimmer of hope through his own actions. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for your permission before bringing you to this place. Xiao Jingyi first apologized to Feng Xiaoqing and Chen Tua. The following operation will be more dangerous. If you want to withdraw. Comrade Xiao Jingyi, I am a police officer just like you. It is our duty to protect the people of this country. Do you think I will choose to give up at this time? Without waiting for him to finish, Feng Xiaoqing waved her small hand and passionately interrupted his words. No matter what, we will go with you. How should he put it? This girl really liked to join in the fun. Otherwise, as a Miss Perfect who did not have to worry about squandering money, she would not have become a police officer and even joined the special case investigation team. Wait a minute, I'm just an ordinary person. Don't represent me so casually. Chen Tua immediately protested. Earthchild, Don't tell me that you're going to watch Ding Yong turn into an idiot and touch your conscience. Don't tell me that on the level of conscience you don't feel the slightest bit of pain? Fang Xiaoqing said righteously with an extremely oppressive voice. The one who should touch your conscience is you. Hey, he didn't become an idiot. Qin Tua argued. Your tuition and living expenses were all funded by Ding Yong. As a kind person who sponsored you to immerse yourself in the sea of questions in high school, you were able to swim freely in algebra, English, ancient poetry and other exams. Now that he has become like this, don't you feel the slightest bit of indignation? Actually, you hate Ding Yong very much. The indignation that I originally had has completely disappeared because of what you said. Earth kid, think about your parents who work in the fields day and night. Don't tell me that the child they raised with their hands and sweat is such a heartless person. They will cry. The one who will cry is me. Speaking of which, this is the most leisurely time for farm work. Qin Tua finally succumbed to the persuasion of the female police officer. Hey, I'll go too. Please don't persuade me with such inexplicable reasons. Xiao Jingyi's plan was very simple. While Su Xinxing attracted most of the attention and strength of the cultists, the defense of the cultists would definitely become very weak. At that time they would try to sneak into the tent of the so-called master and search. Ding Yong had gotten into trouble in that strange tent. If there was a way to save him, the answer would most likely be in the tent of the master. It was good to be able to find the answer in the tent, but if there was really no other way, they could only try to kidnap the master and get him to tell them the solution. However, to be honest, the latter was not a safe option. Even Ding Yong, who was currently the strongest in their group, had suffered at the hands of the other party. Unless Qin Tua took the risk of going berserk again to release the Son of Heaven's sword, it would not be easy to fight the other party. Is there no plan B or something like that? After listening to Xiao Jingyi's plan, Qin Tua suddenly showed a bitter expression, as if he had eaten a bitter gourd, as if he regretted agreeing too quickly. Plan B, don't be a coward. Just do it. I choose to die. Qin Tua rolled his eyes. After a while, there was a sudden commotion on the east side of the camp. The originally silent camp suddenly became noisy. Even though they maintained a certain distance from the camp, Xiao Jingyi and the others could still hear the shouts and questions coming from that side. Most of the voices were beginning to move in that direction. Xiao Jingyi knew that this was probably the opportunity that Su Xinxing had deliberately created. Okay, we have to take advantage of this opportunity to move quickly. If we move too slowly, I'm afraid, Xiao Jingyi said with a serious expression. I'm afraid that those people who came back will discover us, Qin Tua said as he took out the Emperor's sword. No, I'm afraid that old Su will finish off those people and then come this way. Qin Tua summoned the sword spirit who was throwing a tantrum in the Emperor's sword, and looked to the east where screams kept coming from. Would it kill you to trick them once in a while? Chapter 193. When Xiao Jingyi and the others entered the Great Master's tent, they found that it was surprisingly bright inside. There was not a single light to be seen, nor were there any windows, although windows were useless at night, but the tent was not as dark as it should have been. The square tent was filled with a light and elegant sandalwood fragrance. The furnishings inside were also very simple. The furniture was simply a low table with a crystal ball on it. In addition, there was a vermilion shrine, a Buddha statue carved out of an unknown wood, and a cross cast with the crucifixion of Jesus on it. Even this place is a hodgepodge. Xiao Jingyi complained somewhat helplessly. Wait a minute, don't move. At this moment, the Emperor's sword spirit floating behind Qin Tua suddenly spoke up. What's wrong? Fang Xiaoqing, who was already nervous, quickly asked. This is an illusion. The sword spirit girl narrowed her eyes and carefully observed the surrounding environment. She clicked her tongue in wonder. Unbelievable. I always thought that this level of illusion had been lost more than 1,000 years ago. I didn't expect to see it here. Illusion. Xiao Jingyi looked around but could not tell which part was an illusion. Which part is an illusion? Everything is. The sword spirit girl answered without hesitation. All of you back off a little. I'll try to see if I can break this illusion. Wait, according to the plot of horror movies, once you touch this illusion the other party will discover us, right? Qin Tua suddenly said. I think it's better to take the long view. Master, that, you seem to have said it a little too late. The Emperor's sword spirit turned around awkwardly. Following her words, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. It was no longer the bright and grand tent with simple decorations that looked refreshing and generous. Instead, it returned to the darkness and narrowness that a normal tent should have. What was even more unpleasant was that in addition to the entrance of the tent, the other three sides of the tent had short and long three-tiered vermilion tables placed against the walls. Many wooden tablets were placed on top of the tables in an uneven manner. It looked as if it was an ancestral hall where a memorial tablet was enshrined. Wow, this really is a scene from a horror movie. Chin-Tua, who felt that his words had come true, scratched his head in distress. Now that things have come to this, it's too late to leave. Let's take this opportunity to search this place and see if we can find anything. Xiao Jingyi didn't want to waste any more time and said decisively. Since the other two had followed him, they were more or less mentally prepared for this situation. Therefore, they didn't waste any time and began to search for useful clues in this changed tent. Although the other party didn't introduce herself, her cloak made everyone realize that this person was the final boss, the mysterious master. The first to react was Xiao Jingyi. He almost subconsciously picked up the remaining half of the Yuan Rong sword and slashed at the other party. But before the blade touched the other party, the master stretched out his hand and made a pushing action. It was as if Xiao Jingyi had been hit by a speeding car. His entire body flew backward and slammed heavily into the table. The three-tiered table was directly broken, and the memorial tablet placed on it smashed into his face with a crackling sound. What the F***CK force? Chin-Tua's face was full of shock. You've actually seen that movie? The sword spirit of the Emperor's sword was full of shock. I think you're surprised in the wrong place. Fong Shaoqing, who was also full of shock, couldn't help but complain. You dare to break into my territory, I have to admire your courage. The master slowly walked towards them, but no one dared to underestimate the power hidden in the thin body. But I have to say, you're courting death. What the hell are you? Chin-Tua seemed to have given up on struggling. He just stared at the other party and asked, It's not too much for me to want to be a ghost before I die, right? What a scheming brat. But if you're counting on the guy who caused a ruckus in the east to save you, I'm afraid you've miscalculated. Didn't you notice that there's no sound coming from that side? The master sneered. Fine, I'll let you die a little clearer. The so-called master was originally a ghost that wandered between the netherworld. Like most ghosts that couldn't be reincarnated, it had almost no memories of its life. It could only rely on its instincts to wander by the river of forgetfulness, day after day, year after year. Originally, as long as it fused with the other remnant souls by the river of forgetfulness, it would be able to cross the river of forgetfulness and reach the other side. But some problems occurred. A powerful existence from the world of the living occupied its vicinity. The other party's power disrupted its actions. Even if it replenished its soul, it didn't cross the river of forgetfulness. Instead, it continued to devour other remnant souls. Gradually, the remnant souls could no longer satisfy its appetite, so it even began to attack normal souls that were about to cross the river of forgetfulness. In the end, it became one of the most deformed ghosts after mixing with countless souls. Mother Ghost, if it continued to develop under normal circumstances, its deformity would definitely attract the attention of various powerful existences in the underworld, and it would be extinguished. However, about a month ago someone managed to open the gate of the underworld nearby to a certain extent, summoning the existence entrenched at the entrance of the underworld path. And Mother Ghost took advantage of that opportunity to sneak out of the underworld. For most ghosts, sunlight was no different from poison. If they wanted to live a normal life in the world of the living, they needed a physical body. So Mother Ghost possessed an ordinary middle-aged woman and began to secretly help the woman's daily life. This made the woman quickly trust Mother Ghost and even developed a dependence on her. Mother Ghost took advantage of the moment when the woman completely let down her guard against her and devoured her soul, taking over the woman's body and becoming the owner of the body. But Mother Ghost was a combination of souls, and it was too powerful for an ordinary person's body. In addition, there was a limit to the power that she could exert alone in this world. So Mother Ghost simply created the memorial tablets that Xiao Jingyi and the others saw. Then she separated the souls in her body one by one and attached them to the memorial tablets. Then one by one she attached them to the bodies of wealthy businessmen or high-ranking officials, allowing them to gradually squeeze out the soul of the body's original owner. Once the spirit completely occupied a person's body, that person's soul would be attached to the original memorial tablet of the spirit. This way, Mother Ghost only needed to erase all of the person's memories, then devour and separate them once. Then she would have an additional spirit that she could control. As for Ding Yong, who had a certain cultivation base as a century-old ghost who had fused with countless souls, Ghost Mother could naturally tell that he was extraordinary at a glance. Therefore she didn't trick him like she did with ordinary people, and then let the spirit behind him slowly occupy his body. Instead she took advantage of his unprepared state and directly seized his body. Without waiting for the other party to finish his explanation, Qin Tua suddenly made his move and stabbed the Emperor's sword into the other party's head. Then the sword spirit girl entered the sword and a sword aura suddenly appeared, instantly splitting the other party's head in half. Sorry if it's not a movie. The explanation doesn't have invincible time. Qin Tua shook off the viscous dark red blood on his sword and added as if relieved of a burden. But reality did not give him the time to be proud. Kid, you're not bad. Both your mind and willpower are top-notch. Once you become my subordinate spirit, I will definitely put you in an important position. The other party's head had clearly been split in half, but she could still speak. Her tone did not even have a trace of injury. Instead she even had the luxury of praising Qin Tua. This made Qin Tua's heart sink to the bottom. The black cloak was torn apart, revealing a horrifying body that seemed to have been skinned. Her muscle fibers, bones and blood vessels could all be seen clearly. This was no longer the appearance of a human. Instead it gave off the feeling of a white ant queen. The upper half of her body seemed to have been molded out of a few people like plasticine. The lower half of her body was purely made out of countless organs and flesh that were still slowly squirming. There were also a few pairs of hands on both sides of her body that acted as huge egg sacs. Isn't the brain a vital part? Being stared at by the dozens of intact eyeballs on Ghost Mother's upper body, Qin Tua's face could not help but turn pale. If not for the Son of Heaven's sword, he would have been unable to stand steadily. Well, if the resentment in the Son of Heaven's sword hadn't been completely dispersed, this 100-year-old brat, the sword spirit girl who realized that her master was in a bad situation, did not look too good either. She could only hatefully say this. Fang Shaoqing looked like she was about to vomit because of the horrifying and disgusting appearance of Ghost Mother's body. However, the female police officer's mental fortitude was still passable. She gritted her teeth and did not let herself vomit. Instead she wrapped the thousands of gold chains plus one around her gun. In theory this way the bullets could hurt the spirit. Then she nervously pointed the gun at Ghost Mother. Unfortunately the bullet was too small to cause fatal damage to Ghost Mother. This is really the end of everything. Qin Tua looked around helplessly. He felt that there was no other way but to fight to the death. That's not necessarily true. Xiao Jingyi struggled out from the pile of memorial tablets. There was still blood dripping from his forehead. He looked battered and exhausted, but a smile appeared on his face. It's about time. Still not giving up? No matter what, it's impossible. Wait a minute, what's with the memorial tablet in your hand? Ghost Mother originally wanted to ridicule Xiao Jingyi, but the dozens of eyes on her body could not help but be attracted to the memorial tablet in Xiao Jingyi's hand. It was a memorial tablet that looked no different from an ordinary memorial tablet. If there was a difference, it would be that there were no words on it. This memorial tablet was originally written with the word white. Xiao Jingyi casually threw away the memorial tablet in his hand, wiped the blood off his face and said with a smile, if the spirit behind the body that occupied the body was eliminated, then isn't it normal for the original soul to return to the body? No, impossible, such a thing. Ghost Mother finally began to panic. What? Haven't you noticed? From the very beginning, the reason we appeared here was to attract your attention and do our best to delay you, to prevent you from doing something desperate in desperation, such as destroying the souls of the victims. Xiao Jingyi shook his collar, revealing a small radio microphone that was not very obvious. Then he raised the yuan rong sword again, but this time, there was a 50 cents bracelet plus 2 foot wrapped around the sword. So this was our mission. Chintua sighed. Uncle, why didn't you tell us before? I really thought we were done for, okay? Sorry, but isn't there a saying? If you want to deceive the enemy, you must first deceive your own people. Xiao Jingyi laughed and explained to the unhappy Chintua. I'm going to kill you. But Ghost Mother, who had been fooled, was obviously in a bad mood. In her anger, all the ghosts in the red memorial tablets were summoned. Countless ghosts floated in the air, and the gloomy ghost energy caused the surrounding temperature to drop by nearly 10 degrees. Fang Xiaoqing couldn't help but shiver. Just as the evil ghosts were about to pounce on them under Ghost Mother's command and devour them, the tent was destroyed. It was as if a force 12 wind blew past everyone's scalps without warning, and the tent was directly swept away, along with the hundreds of ghosts. Sorry. In the direction of the wind, Xiao Hei slowly trotted over with cat steps. I seem to be a little late. Too slow. Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but complain. If I didn't talk to buy time, we would have been wiped out. Sorry, it took me a lot of time to get rid of the ghosts one by one, and to modify the memory of the victims who were still alive. Xiao Hei laughed. Also, your earpiece was very painful when it was clipped to my ear, so I threw it away after listening to this guy's explanation. Is that okay? That thing is very expensive. Forget it, it can be reimbursed at public expense this time anyway. Ghost Mother couldn't believe her eyes as she looked at the man and the cat chatting like old friends. Was it this cat that had ruined all his plans? However, just as she was about to make trouble, she found that she couldn't even move a single tentacle in front of the cat. Soul creatures were often the most sensitive creatures. Without the restraint of a physical body, they could more clearly perceive the strength of others. Even if Ghost Mother had made herself such a physical body in order to live in the world of the living, she still retained her instincts as a ghost. Even if there was no way to perceive the strength of the black cat, her instincts made her feel as if she had encountered the most powerful predator in the netherworld. She couldn't even raise the thought of resistance. What kind of monster was this cat? If there's nothing else you want to say, then let's call it a day. Although the black cat's face was expressionless, Ghost Mother couldn't help but feel that the cat seemed to be smiling ominously. How dare you play this kind of game in my territory? I'll return your words to you. You're digging your own grave. Before Ghost Mother could react, Su Xinxing's cat claw had completely wiped her out of existence. Chapter 194. Did you see the instructor's twisted face? So scary. I wonder what will happen to Su Xinxing. Monkey, who was as skinny as ever, said with joy. At Jiangjin University in the late summer, Monkey and Fatty walked together on the tree-lined road back to the dormitory. As hardcore comrades who had failed the advanced mathematics exam together, they had to attend tutoring and make-up exams even during the summer vacation. In addition to them, there were many students who had failed, but only Su Xinxing was special. That guy had missed nearly half of the tutoring sessions. Because of this, the tutor, who was already unhappy that he had to rush to school to teach the last-place students in the hot summer, naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to make a fuss. Even the instructor of their class was annoyed. He almost took a kitchen knife and went to Su Xinxing's house. But to be honest, since Fusang came back and showed her face, old Su has been out of contact for half a month, right? Is there really no problem? Fatty couldn't help but worry a little. There's no problem. I called his phone and he said he was just busy with some things. Monkey looked indifferent. He didn't worry about Su Xinxing, who had stolen his sweetheart. Wait, from what you said, the person who answered the phone wasn't old Su himself? Fatty asked curiously. Yes, it was Su Xinxing's sister. It's a lovely voice as always. Monkey covered his face and made a bashful expression. Your expression is so disgusting. Even the cat lying on the branch is looking at you with contempt. Fatty's eyebrows twitched, and he silently distanced himself from Monkey. What look of disdain? Cats have facial paralysis to begin with. Monkey didn't care. He followed Fatty's gaze and found a Xiao Hei cat lying on the branch of a sycamore tree not far away. The tree branch wasn't that tall, and it was within the reach of one's hand. For this kind of stray cat, as long as you feed it something, it will get close to you. If you don't believe me, I still have half a sausage bread left from lunch. As he spoke, Monkey rummaged through the shoulder bag at his waist. Then he took out a soft sausage bread wrapped in plastic paper with only half of it left. When he opened the transparent plastic, a strange smell spread out. This thing can't be eaten anymore, right? Fatty pinched his nose and distanced himself a little further. Then he tried to remind his comrade tactfully. It's okay, it's for the cat anyway. Monkey hesitated for a moment, but in the end he still raised the half piece of sausage bread towards Xiaohei. Then the loaf of bread was quickly knocked away by the black cat, who looked lazy just now with a meatball, and it fell on the monkey's face. The sour smell is rushing into my nose. Monkey, whose face was covered in bread, rolled on the ground exaggeratedly. Remember to throw away the bread when you're done playing. Fatty looked at his comrade helplessly and could only remind him from the side. That damned black cat actually dared to reject my good intentions. Monkey struggled to pull the rotting bread off his face as he was about to suffocate. He angrily rushed towards the cat on the branch and raised his fist. However, the cat once again calmly stretched out 2 meatballs. Ah! My eyes. Monkey knelt on the ground, covered his eyes and cried out in pain. Hey, are you okay? I think I heard a poof sound. Seems like it was poked quite deeply. Fatty asked worriedly. Damn it. Just a cat. After his vision returned to normal, Monkey looked at the cat angrily. Why don't we just let it go? Fatty tried his best to persuade. What kind of joke is this? How could I? Wait a minute, is that song you? Just as Monkey was about to give an impassioned speech, he was startled by the girl who walked past the fork in the road. Could it be that she also failed some of her classes? Don't talk nonsense, she's a top student who even got a scholarship. Fatty seriously corrected him. I heard that the school will be organizing some activity in 2 days, and the leaders hope that Song Yu can participate in the performance. Didn't they always ask the Chong Shaoxian to do this in the past? The Chong Shaoxian also seems to have a performance, but Song Yu is the finale. Think about it, it's not like we didn't see how popular she was a while ago. It's not like we didn't use such a good publicity resource for free, right? Bah, those old perverts who use their position for personal gain. Monkey was indignant. Alright, don't talk nonsense, it's just a normal performance, okay? As the two chatted, Monkey forgot about the black cat and slowly walked back to the dormitory with Fatty. Only Xiaohei the cat was lying on the branch as if it was listening to their conversation. After they were a certain distance away, Xiaohei the cat lightly jumped down from the branch and landed on the ground with perfect movements. Then it ran in the direction that the girl had just walked. Song Yu was a bit irritated these few days. Of course, it wasn't because of her relatives, but because she hadn't seen Su Xinxing in a while. These 2 days, even if she went to Ying's apartment, she would only see Mo Li, who was playing on the computer. Although the little girl said confidently that Su Xinxing had something to do and would be back soon, the girl was still a bit worried since he hadn't appeared for so long. Just when she was feeling so vexed, the school actually called her out and asked her to sing for the finale of some evening party later. It wasn't that she couldn't contribute to her alma mater, but if she was asked to do something like this, even Song Yu would be unhappy. After this performance, she would go talk to her teacher and ask her not to participate in these kinds of activities anymore. The girl made up her mind. At this time she suddenly felt a furry feeling on her ankle. The girl's first reaction was caterpillar, but considering her image as a goddess in school, she didn't yell out. Instead she looked down in fear. The result made her sigh in relief. It wasn't a caterpillar that she was afraid of, but a Xiaohei the cat. Its fur was fine, but its fur was a bit thin. At this moment the Xiaohei the cat made a gurgling sound from its throat. The girl picked it up and said, "Are you comforting me?" "Thanks, little guy." Song Yu didn't know why, but she suddenly felt that this cat looked a bit like her sweetheart that she hadn't seen for a few days. "Okay, if you're a boy, I'll call you Su Jinyan. If you're a girl, I'll call you Su Peiyu." After thinking about it, she realized that the villa she was living in didn't have any rules against pets, so the girl decided to take this Xiaohei the cat home. She smiled and looked at its furry face. "Hey little guy, do you have fleas? Forget it, whether you have them or not, I'll take you to take a bath first. I've accumulated 3 gifts. Thank you to Siosi Eridion, Unprincipled Entanglement, City of Shadows, Tianjiao Higan of Starry Sky, Non-Toxic Chinese Group. I've seen your books. Novel lover, feather slasher, Wang Chong Chongon, Chen Xingxi, happy clapper, wooden knight, bat lowly on the big crane, Batgirl is an angel, meow, Haruku, wandering octopus in the stars, normal ID, Lilicon Yu, she weighs, lowly wife, Batgirl, 0-hour butterfly, Solomon, mad dog, Batgirl is living well, purple sister is 17 years old, Frost. Fantasy, Shadow Bird, Zicio 12345, Reverie, Tang Dynasty's third dragon, Smuff, Passing Scars, Fu Empress, Beifeng Chongzhua, Note Magic Magician, Bookman 1415661970, Rusty Rock, Destiny's Edge, Wang Chan from Wang Xing, Bat's ID is abnormal, Recovery, G Vanguard of the Guild, Wu Tun, 7 Luminaries, Madness in the Fourth Space, Not Small White, Saint Radiant, Memories, Sting, Kue Tori, Tanuki, Majestic, XXXXX, Bat's back super tight, Yi photographer from Centris Ragnar? Hey, there's something under Batgirl's skirt, Clam Bookman, Strategic Clam Army, Long Time Gone, Batgirl Among Us, Iguain, Single Dog Season, Yucklewood, Broken, Odd Eye, When Moral Integrity Falls, Batgirl with a White Body, Elegy of the Lost Brave, Don't Hear, Smell, Touch or Lick, Batgirl's Lack of Value, Highway, Silent Blockman, Batgirl in Devil's Clothing, Island, Kaze Class 1 Destroyer. Tufang Shirsi, Flamewiss, Xiaoxiang Feather, Ederty, Mothership, Chichi Prologue, True Love Wind, Bookman 3853033337, Speed Snail, Al 203, Thoughts of Hope, Blue Wings, Your Cute Pill, Toilet Lid, Spring Breeze, Combing Rain, Blue Starsky, Twilight Tower of the Stars, Jicha 60 Yuan, Xiao Ryu Zui, Existence is Reasonable, Blood River of the Shadows, Sasuda Hinata, Benevolence is Righteous, Colorful Humanoid, Bookman 55495235. The Last Roman, The Old Hunter's Sword Will Never Die, Burn Imagination, Jed 05, Bozel, Hongmeng, Nothingness, Abortion, Batgirl, Bat Dances with the Sinful Bag, Don't Be Lonely, Batgirl, Random Call Me Casually, Batgirl Licking My Crotch, Cloud Watching Waste, Claire, Acid Wash, High As You, Intentional Return, Anna Charisse, She-Court, MDXZ, Papa, Batgirl, Dried Tofu, Huerto, I Wanna Have a Sister, Reino, Yuan Hanshao, Lin Xingyue, Academia Gentleman, Yuan Qingying, Bane, Mactroid, My Harem, Mrs. Brand Rice Ball, Kun Peng, Altori, Pandora, Flightless Snail, 39, Beyond Heaven, Shiling Apostle Moritip. Chapter 195. The situation wasn't good. Su Xinxing, who had originally planned to eat at Song Yu's place, found that the current situation seemed to be beyond his expectations. The other party was now full of interest and wanted to take a bath with him, in cat form. Even if he tried to resist, it would have little effect. After all, it was too difficult to control his strength without hurting the other party. This made Su Xinxing feel a little helpless. There was no other way. It seemed that this freeloading plan had to be stopped. Thinking of this, Su Xinxing jumped out of the girl's hands and quickly ran to the window. Then, with a pied sound, it hit the spotless window glass that was completely unrecognizable. You actually hate taking a bath with me that much. Song Yu's shoulders drooped as she was hit hard. She picked up Xiao Hei, who was relieved that she didn't break the glass. Forget it, I heard that kittens can't take too many baths. It's a little late today. Let's go buy a flea ring tomorrow. Hearing that the girl had given up on her dangerous plan, Su Xinxing was finally relieved. Song Yu rummaged through the storage room and found a cardboard box. Then she patted some clothes that weren't too shabby. She put Xiao Hei inside and went to the bathroom to take a bath. How should he put it? Su Xinxing felt that he couldn't calm down. Logically speaking, it wasn't like he hadn't seen a girl's body before. Emily also often took baths with him. But for some reason this situation had a different kind of romantic feeling. Maybe he should just sleep. Lying in the cardboard box and closing his eyes for a while, Su Xinxing realized that he seemed to be a little wrong. The clothes in the cardboard box had a pleasant floral fragrance. It might be the smell of laundry detergent or shampoo, but Su Xinxing had smelled a similar fragrance on Song Yu's body before. Not only was sleeping on top of the cardboard box unable to calm down, but it also made his imagination run wild. So when Song Yu finished her bath and walked out of the bathroom in her pajamas, she saw Xiao Hei facing the corner of the wall. She seemed to be a little self-deprecating, as if she was reflecting on herself. After playing with Xiao Hei for a while, it was time for dinner. Since there was no cat food at home, just as Su Xinxing had expected, he was fed chicken breast meat by the girl. Although she didn't add much salt, it was almost tasteless. Even so, it was still much better than the instant noodles that Emily, that little idiot, made at home. Qin Xingyan hadn't returned yet, and Chihaya Fukuyama seemed to be staying at the earth goddess Loli's house to learn some things about being a god. However, in 2 days Asahi Sakurakanji would come to Jiangjin. At that time he would be able to end his homeless days. Su Shinxing, who was full, was lying on the girl's bed. His brain, which was a little slow because of the full meal, was thinking lazily. Song Yu, on the other hand, was leaning against the white soft leather headboard. She was half sitting on the bed. In front of her was a lazy table and a laptop. He seemed to be searching for something on the computer. Just as Su Shinxing was about to fall asleep because of the comfortable air conditioning, the girl suddenly hugged him in her arms. As a cat, he could also see the computer screen. There was a page for a furniture store on the screen. "Little kitty, what do you think of this cabinet?" Song Yu happily patted his head and asked. Su Shinxing's ears drooped as he yawned. After seeing the string of zeros on the price column, he lost interest in this thing. "I knew you would like it." She didn't notice the black cat's lazy appearance at all. The girl was immersed in her own fantasy. This color scheme is very compatible with the decorations in Sakura's apartment. The girl's next sentence made Su Shinxing a little concerned. Speaking of which, Song Yu seemed to have stuffed a lot of furniture, pillows, and other messy things into Sakura's apartment. Recently, even the kitchen had a lot of utensils. It wasn't that it was a hindrance. It was better to say that she did this to make the house more comfortable. Su Shinxing was also very welcoming at first because he didn't need to spend his own money. However, after seeing the price of this cabinet, he felt that it was a little inappropriate. Song Yu didn't notice the change in Su Shinxing's expression. She was only focused on laughing foolishly at the black cat. "Hee, one day the furniture in Sakura's apartment will be sent by me. At that time, in a sense, I can also be regarded as the hostess." So that's what she was thinking. No. When Su Shinxing didn't know how to complain, the girl let go of the black cat and gently patted her cheek. "In order to be worthy of him, I have to study harder." After that, the girl opened a website. Su Shinxing glanced at the website introduction and found that it seemed to be a video website that taught some housework skills through video. And what Song Yu was learning was the advanced version of the skills brides must master. Advanced tailoring skills, 32. Judging from the progress bar, this thing was actually 3 hours long. The girl got up from the bed, ran to the cabinet next to her, and took out a set of sewing tools and various colors of cloth from it. Even if it was just a glimpse, Su Shinxing could see that the cabinet was full of various knitwear and sewing products. But judging from their degree of completion, most of them could only be regarded as failed products. But now the girl's movements and skills seemed to be very skilled. Even Su Shinxing, who had some ability in housework, couldn't find many flaws. If one looked carefully, one could also find that the girl's originally smooth and delicate hands had unknowingly appeared calluses. Su Shinxing always felt that if he continued to stay here, there would be a subtle sense of guilt in his heart. But before he could leave, Song Yu caught him again and put a cowboy-style jacket on him, who was only a black cat at the moment, rather than saying that it was cute. "It was originally for me and..." The girl's small face blushed and seemed to omit something and then said, "It's for children. Now, after a little modification, you can also wear it." "And not bad, isn't it very handsome?" Song Yu smiled and put a cowboy hat and a pair of small boots made of unknown cloth on the black cat. This made the current Su Shinxing feel absolutely right if he stood up and said that it was noon. After doing all this, she immersed herself in learning again. Su Shinxing, on the other hand, was stunned for a long time. In the end, he quietly left the villa through the living room window. Then he found a suspicious black cat on the street and beat it up without saying a word. Then he took it to Song Yu's house and warned the trembling cat to listen to its owner. Originally, Su Shinxing wanted to take off his clothes and let that fellow wear it, but in the end he hesitated for a long time, sighed, and finally quietly left Song Yu's house wearing that set of clothes. Chapter 196. After turning into a cat, Su Shinxing didn't have to walk on 4 legs like a real cat. The reason why he acted like that before was purely to avoid being seen and causing a commotion. However, it was rare for him to get a set of clothes from Song Yu. If he continued to act like a normal cat, he would feel that something was wrong, because this set of clothes only had a pair of shoes. Well, although there seemed to be something wrong, Su Xinxing still started to walk on two legs like the cat in Shrek. Of course, this didn't mean that the danger of being seen and causing a commotion was reduced. In fact, it was more suspicious. Since Xiao Jingyi's house was in a densely populated urban area, for the sake of insurance he probably couldn't go there in the future. Similarly, he couldn't go to the office of the Special Case Investigation Team. Su Xinxing suddenly realized that he could only go back to Sakura apartment in the suburbs and live on Mo Li's instant noodles for a living. Even so, the suburbs weren't really deserted. If he didn't want to be seen, he could only rely on his outstanding physical ability to run back at close to the first speed in the universe. The reaction speed of the human eye was about 1/24th of a second, which meant that as long as he passed through the vision of ordinary people in this time zone, he wouldn't be noticed. To be honest, for Su Xinxing this wasn't too difficult. But when he was ready and took the first step, he found that he had neglected a considerable problem. Ever since he had turned into a cat, he had never walked upright on his two legs, so he still subconsciously used the movement habits of a human. The problem was that the structure of a cat's leg was not only different from that of a human's leg, but also the length. Chapter 197. This feeling of déjà vu. Could it be another hero summoning? Although he said so, even if he was a magic idiot, Su Xinxing still understood that this summoning technique was not the same type of hero summoning he had experienced before. The summoning magic that Su Xinxing was first summoned to Aurovia was a type of teleportation magic. Simply put, it was to pull the target from another world into a magic array. But after Su Xinxing experienced a series of adventures and became a real hero, he was immune to almost all magic, including teleportation magic. Therefore, in order to find a way to return to Earth, Su Xinxing suffered a lot, and he even almost gave up returning to Earth. And this time he also came to this world. Obviously, this summoning magic was not teleportation magic, but dimensional magic that connected the two worlds. If teleportation magic was a box elevator, this magic was equivalent to creating a door. Su Xinxing could not take the elevator because of personal reasons, but if it was just walking through a door, it was still possible. And compared to the summoning magic that could select a target and teleport accurately 3 years ago, this magic was obviously much simpler and crude. After all, judging from the center of the magic array, the target of this summoning should be the three little guys, and Su Xinxing was also brought over. In addition, this world was a bit strange. The first thing that could be confirmed was that this was not Aurovia, because Su Xinxing had left a lot of mythical enchantments that could be maintained permanently in that world during his adventures. If he returned there, he would definitely be able to perceive those enchantments, but there was no such feeling here at all. However, this should not be a place he had never been to before, because he could vaguely feel some familiar aura. Could it be the Lattice World? The Demon King who invaded Aurovia came from a world called the Great Demon Realm. Su Xinxing's final adventure in another world was to break into the Great Demon Realm with his companions, kill the last king of the Demon Realm, subdue the will of the world, and then escape from that world before the Great Demon Realm was destroyed. But on the way to the Great Demon Realm, they had discovered the real secret of this world that could continuously produce Demon King-level powerhouses. It turned out that the Great Devil Realm would consciously draw close to other small worlds, and then the Devil Realm King would send Devil Kings to invade and conquer that world. The conquered world would be devoured by the Great Demonic Realm and finally turned into a beautiful pearl the size of a fist, displayed in the exhibition cabinet of the King of the Demonic Realm. However, these worlds that were stacked in the grid were not destroyed. Instead, they became the energy source of the Great Devil Realm. The Great Devil Realm extracted the world's power to create Devil King-level powerhouses to conquer other worlds. And those worlds that were used as batteries were called Lattice Worlds by someone in the Salvation Team. If Su Xinxing did not succeed in saving Aurovia, it would probably be made into a Lattice World and displayed as food for the Great Demon Realm. In order to solve this problem once and for all, Su Xinxing took his friends in Aurovia through more than 9,000 Lattice Worlds, defeated the Devil Kings that dominated those worlds one by one, and liberated all those worlds. Of course, because most of the world's power was extracted by the Great Demon Realm, the flow of time in those worlds was much faster than in the Great Demon Realm. Therefore, after about half a month in the outside world, Su Xinxing's group completed the liberation of 9,000 worlds. And now this world had a subtle and familiar aura, but it did not belong to Olivia. It was probably one of the lattice worlds that had been saved before. That's how it is. If possible, can you please become a hero and defeat the Devil King to save this world? While Su Xinxing was in a daze, the world introduction on the other side seemed to have ended. The next words should be something like a beginner's guide, right? The one who spoke was a young girl with long wavy green hair and almond-colored eyes. She was wearing a snow-white dress that was reminiscent of ancient Greece. Just now, Su Xinxing had vaguely heard the word princess. Combined with the fact that they were now in a magnificent palace, he was almost certain of the other party's identity. No problem. He did not know what the princess said just now, but in short, Yi Qing, who was summoned as a hero, was already excited and answered loudly without hesitation. Wait a minute, idiot Yi Qing, don't casually play hero. I agree, this is too dangerous for Yi Qing, classmate. Coming here with Yi Qing, the two girls who were originally like fire and water now had a rare unity of opinion. Because they had personally experienced the inconceivable summoning, they did not suspect it as a prank, but instead began to persuade the boy. Little Qian Shuiyao, I did not decide to become a hero just to play hero. The boy shook his head, took a step forward and said in a firm tone, you should all know that my father was a narcotics officer when he was alive, right? I grew up watching his back. So even today when justice is mocked and ridiculed, I still yearn for justice. To be able to save the people of a world in one go, I will definitely not let go of this opportunity to carry out justice. Su Xinxing crouched on the ground and slightly recognized the other party's expression, and found that the look of righteousness was not faked. The two girls looked at each other and then both showed a helpless smile at the same time. Really, the princess over there, other than being a hero, must have a profession that can help save the world. The arrogant girl named Little Qian stopped smiling and asked the princess from another world, for example, a magician or something like that? Little Qian? Yi Qing was stunned. Because Yi Qing is a big idiot, without me watching he might not even know if someone sold him. In order to keep the promise with Uncle Yi, I can only act with you, right? The girl put her hands on her hips and said rudely, not giving Yi Qing a chance to refute. If that's the case, then I can only join. Please help me change my profession to a priest. Not to be outdone, another girl who looked like an ice beauty said, I think Yi Qing classmate will have a need for this kind of holiness. Physiologically, whisper. I don't even have the desire to complain anymore. Little Qian sighed and muttered helplessly, can't you be more sensitive to the situation when you are in heat? Hey, Lin Qian is actually from the Yaohe sect. Ah, shut up, you perverted fool. Seeing the two girls quarreling again, Yi Qing, who was originally a little touched, could only laugh bitterly and explain to the princess, who was at a loss. Please don't mind them, this is their unique way of interacting with each other. Is that so? The way you communicate with each other is really intense. Speaking of which, what does Yaohe mean? The princess asked in a low voice, a little embarrassed. Please forget this word. Yi Qing almost hit his head on the floor. Oh, that. Hero, I have another question. What is it? Yi Qing looked at the curious princess and asked cautiously. That strange creature, the princess pointed at Su Xinxing, is it also a specialty of your world? Chapter 198. Why is there a cat here? After turning around and finding Su Xinxing, who had been doing nothing since the beginning, the arrogant girl blinked her eyes and said with a frown. A creature of this world. Judging from the pet costume, I don't think so. Xia Shuyao looked at Su Xinxing's jeans that didn't fit him well and raised her eyebrows slightly. He must have been involved in the summoning spell and transmigrated with us. Yi Qing smiled bitterly and came to Su Xinxing's conclusion. I'm sorry, kitty. I'm afraid you'll have to be separated from your original owner for a while. Su Xinxing's back answered him. The princess of this world looked at the disappointed hero, Yi Qing. Am I hated by cats? Then she looked at Su Xinxing, who was in his black cat form, and asked curiously, are the cat fur in your world so sparse? This might be a mix between a sphinx hairless cat and a dragonly cat. Xia Shuyao spouted nonsense with a straight face. The princess of this world could only say, although I don't understand, it seems so powerful. After a small commotion, the princess's reception of the hero of this world was on the right track. As heroes, they were definitely different from ordinary militia. They had some extraordinary abilities, whether it was magic, physical strength, or intelligence. But the specific differences could only be found after a test. Miss Lin Chantian Magic. Magic power. 530,000 rings. The old man who was conducting the test for them, who looked like a magician, exclaimed in disbelief. Suddenly, the palace was filled with the whispers of magicians. In order to activate the summoning spell, the princess seemed to have invited all the high-level magicians in the country to the palace. Ring was a magic unit in this world. Apart from the archmages, the court magicians who stood at the top of the magicians generally had about 300 to 500 rings. By the way, there was nothing in this world that could withstand the magical power that came from Mo Li in Su Shenxing's body. Therefore, even if Su Shenxing went up to test it, other than making the crystal ball emit a dazzling light and turn into ashes, nothing else could be tested. Miss Xia Xueyao's magic power is 370,000 rings. Although it's not as good as Miss Lin Qianxi's, it's still a very impressive number. By the way, is this magic conductor broken? The two numbers that had never been seen before made the old magician gasp in amazement. At the same time, he couldn't help but wonder if the magic device he used for the test was working properly. However, after testing it and finding that his mana was still the same 462 rings that had remained unchanged for 10,000 years, he finally gave up on the idea that there was a problem with the device, and could only sigh that as expected of the hero's companion. Even the princess's beautiful eyes were filled with hope. If it's us, maybe we can. All in all, almost everyone began to look forward to how terrifying I Ching's magic power was. Lady I Ching's magic power is... After the white-bearded old magician tested I Ching, he seemed as if he couldn't believe his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he read out the number, 0 rings. Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, his words immediately caused a burst of exclamations in the palace. Suddenly, the palace became as noisy as the market at Airlie Bridge. Even Su Shenxing, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines and thought that he might be involved in another round of soy sauce, couldn't help but be surprised. In theory, magic power was a power derived from life force. Although there were differences in quality and quantity, everyone should have magic power. Even Su Shenxing, who was a magic idiot, was only diagnosed as slim-level magic power when he transmigrated to Auravia for the magic power test. Well, at least this indirectly proved that this world of swords and magic was not Auravia. After careful consideration, Su Shenxing finally felt that it might be that the magic power test in this world was not accurate. For example, I Ching's magic power was 0. 1 ring, but the minimum requirement to be tested was 1 ring. Therefore, there was this no magic power situation. In contrast, Auravia was much simpler and more straightforward. Everything below a certain magnitude was classified as slim level. What? I was looking forward to seeing how powerful this so-called new hero is. In the end, it's just a joke. A slightly disappointed voice sounded from above the palace. For some reason, this voice seemed to have an overwhelming presence. Just a moment ago, the palace was still noisy because of the mage's whispers, but in the next moment, the noise was drowned out by this voice that wasn't too loud. Almost everyone looked up and saw a little girl with demon wings sitting on the chandelier, shaking her lotus-like legs. Her cute face was full of disappointment. After seeing her, Su Shenxing, who had been guessing which world this was, showed an icy expression on his face. After all, compared to the characteristics of this world, the appearance of a loli was easier to remember. Although he might have met the princess before, the biggest characteristic of humans was that they had a short shelf life. At least Su Shenxing could not recognize her now. In this regard, the 10,000-year-old loli of the demon race had the advantage of being familiar with her face. The princess, who had been amiable all this time, showed a hostile expression at this moment. She stared coldly at the little girl. One of the 4 legendary generals of the old Demon King's era, the blood-burning Soraya. Why are you here? Of course, I'm here to see what your so-called hero's summoning is all about. The little girl did not seem to notice the princess's hostility at all. Chapter 199. Yiqing could not move. All the muscles in his body were trembling, not out of fear but because he had lost the ability to move in the face of pure killing intent. If he had not already faced death, let alone the ability to move, his mind would have gone blank and he would have lost the ability to think. But when the demon girl aimed her killing intent at Yiqing's two childhood friends, Yiqing's body finally broke through the fear of death and regained his freedom. But Yiqing was just an ordinary person. He did not even have a strong magic power like Lin Qianxi and the others. Wanting to rely on a human's physical strength to deal with a demon was simply a fantasy. But even so, Yiqing had no reason to give up. He casually grabbed the decorative long silver candlestick beside him and pulled out the candle, intending to use it as a handgun. At this time, the black cat that came from Earth like him suddenly jumped onto his shoulder, catching him off guard and causing him to stagger. But the arrow was already nocked and Yiqing did not have the leisure to pull the cat down. He could only use salted fish thrust at the demon girl. But at this moment, Yiqing noticed that the other party had a sinister smile that was the opposite of her sweet appearance. He had been tricked. The other party's original goal seemed to be him, the new hero. If he could not break free from the shackles of killing intent, then the other party would kill Lin Qianxi and the others with their magic talent. If he broke free and tried to stop her, then the other party would kill him. In a sense, it was not a loss either way. What a pity. It seemed that his journey to another world would come to an end before it had even begun. Yiqing smiled bitterly in his heart. But in the next moment, an inexplicable warmth came from the black cat on his shoulder. Yiqing raised his hand to block the demon girl's death scythe's blade as if he had the help of a god. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of metal, he forcibly blocked the attack. Logically speaking, the candlestick in his hand was not only made of silver, which was second only to gold in terms of ductility, but it also had a hollow pattern on it for the sake of aesthetics and for the purpose of placing fragrance. Let alone a heavy blow, it would probably bend with just a few hits. But after taking a direct hit from the demon girl, not only did the candlestick not break, there wasn't even a scratch on it. It was like a rare divine weapon. Of course, Soraya would not stop attacking after failing to hit Yiqing. Instead, she waved her scythe at Yiqing from different directions in a dazzling manner. Because of the special structure of the scythe, the attack route of this weapon was quite tricky, and it could catch all close combat professions off guard and make them suffer a great loss. However, Yiqing was able to predict the opponent's attack trajectory and deflect all of the opponent's attacks with the candlestick. The speed at which the two of them were exchanging blows became faster and faster, to the point where it exceeded the visual capabilities of ordinary people. Can you see it? Don't be silly. Even if I use eagle eye, I can't see it. This level of attack and defense has already reached the level of a sword saint, right? As expected of a brave warrior. At first, the surrounding magicians were bewildered, but they soon became happy. At least this time they wouldn't be wiped out by that demon's sneak attack, right? Even the demon girl showed a surprised expression. The previous attacks were not only physical attacks, but also quite powerful magic, but still did not cause any damage to the boy named Yiqing. You're not bad. Soraya unexpectedly put away her scythe. Although I still want to fight for a while, there's no point in continuing. And if I'm surrounded by human powerhouses, it'll be a bit troublesome. Let's call it a day. Boy, what's your name? Yiqing. Yiqing? I'll remember it. Let's leave the outcome of our battle for another time. After saying that, she smiled faintly and disappeared into the wisdom eye. A moment later, the magicians burst into cheers for their new hero. Amazing. You're so amazing, stupid Yiqing. Lin Qianxian muttered in disbelief. Then, influenced by the atmosphere, she ran to Yiqing and said, "When did you become so powerful?" As expected of classmate Yiqing, I've become more excited, in the sense of sex. Xia Shuiao also floated over and congratulated in her own way. Yiqing could only reply with a wry smile. That's not good. At this time, the princess walked over and pretended to be angry. The demons asked for your name. How can you say it so casually? This kind of name has power. If they use it to curse you, it'll be troublesome. What? Stupid Yiqing, are you okay? Lin Qianxian hurriedly asked. We need to give Yiqing a detailed body check. Please provide us with a room. Xia Shuiao also said with a serious face. I'm fine, thank you for the reminder. Yiqing hurriedly laughed, then gave the two girls a look and said, But Your Highness Shuyao is right, we are indeed a bit tired. Can you provide us with 3 rooms? Of course. Follow my maids and you will be able to enter the rooms that have been prepared for you. The princess would naturally agree to such a small request. Lin Qianqian and Xia Shuyao did not return to their rooms, but followed Yi Qing into his room. Idiot Yi Qing, did you have something to say to us? As childhood sweethearts who had been together for more than 5 years, Lin Qianqian naturally understood the look in Yi Qing's eyes. Hey, aren't you going to solve classmate Yi Qing's physiological problem? Xia Shuyao looked surprised. After a while they finally returned to the main topic. Chapter 200. The Demon King had made a comeback. However, unlike the terrifying war 15 years ago, where the Demon King ruled the entire world in just a few months, the Demon King's army's offensive this time was not so sharp. After nearly a year, they had only invaded nearly 1/5 of the humans' territory. Although it was a disaster for the countries that bore the brunt of the attack, the people at the rear did not have any deep understanding of it. After all, it had been 15 years and even the pain had begun to fade. Not to mention, in this world where the productivity was only slightly stronger than in the Middle Ages, the human lifespan was not long. 15 years was equivalent to a quarter of an ordinary person's life. Also, Deja was a small town near the eastern edge of the Frost Eagle Empire. Because of its unique geographical location bordering the rich resources of the Gloom Forest in the east, this small town was considered prosperous. The Demon King's army's invasion began from the west, and the war was still far away from this small town. Therefore, this somewhat remote town's residents still maintained their original rhythm of life. Irene, don't run around, you said you'd go back after buying the wheat flour. A scholarly blonde young man shouted to the 11 or 12-year-old girl who was watching a minstrel perform at the fountain in the central square of the town. But the girl seemed to be fascinated by the performance and did not notice that her father was calling her. Helpless, the young man could only carry the wheat flour and walk to the central square. After getting close to a certain extent, he realized that the minstrel's puppet show was the scene of the hero and his party challenging the Demon King 15 years ago. For most of the minstrel, this could be regarded as a repertoire, almost the same as the ancient storytellers of the Celestial Empire's Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Evil Demon King, your tyranny will end here. If you are willing to surrender, I can spare your life. Don't even think about it, my rule will not be shaken. How can my ambition end because of you humans? Since you are so stubborn, then don't blame me for ending your fantasy with the sword in my hand. The minstrel said the lines vividly while skillfully using the marionette to perform a wonderful fighting scene. Seeing this scene, the blonde young man could not help but whisper softly. That girl didn't put up any resistance at all. Back then, when His Excellency led us into Hellcrown, she very readily surrendered, okay? Dad, what did you say? The little girl who finally came back to her senses and realized that her father was right beside her asked curiously. I say it's already very late. If you don't obediently go back with me, your mother will definitely be angry. The golden-haired youth said to the little girl with a pleasant expression. The little girl couldn't help but shiver when she recalled the terror of her mother's rage. After reluctantly looking at the puppet, she obediently ran to her father's side and planned to go home with him. Dad, can we buy some candy? Can't be done because of tooth decay. Didn't your mother say that before we came out? What about the cheese powder? I want to eat Mom's pizza. I just ate yesterday, so I don't think I can do it. What about the deluxe raspberry strawberry syrup sundae? Your demands are getting higher and higher, hey. The father and daughter had a silly conversation as they walked towards the outskirts of the town. But halfway through, the golden-haired youth suddenly stopped in his tracks. He cast a puzzled look at the 3 people not far away. It was a strange combination of a young man, 2 young girls, and a cat in clothes. Of course, what made him feel strange was not the 3 of them. After all, this was a magical world and there were many abhumans in this world, so it was normal for there to be some strange people occasionally. What made the youth puzzled was that he seemed to vaguely feel a familiar wave from the 3 of them. It was neither magic nor combat aura. It was just like the power used by His Excellency 15 years ago. Excuse me, are you Mr. Finn Watkins? The young man in the lead asked with some uncertainty. That's not right, big brother. My father is Finn Gilquet. Before the youth could answer, the little girl beside him had already said, and isn't Finn Watkins the legendary third prince of the Frost Eagle Empire? Isn't he the hero who once broke into Hellcrown with the heroes from another world, defeated the Demon King and saved the world? That's right, you must have mistaken him for someone else. After being interrupted by his daughter, the golden-haired youth smiled and replied. After living a peaceful life for 15 years, he did not want his daily life to be disturbed. What's more, he did not know the purpose of these people's visit, so it was better not to expose his identity. The three of them looked at each other and seemed to be uncertain. However, just when the golden-haired youth thought that he had gotten away with it, the cat lying on the youth's shoulder suddenly spoke. Finn, it seems that you're doing well. Gilquet, TSK, could it be that you and that guy? No, since this little girl called you father, could it be? This voice. Finn was shocked and had an expression of disbelief on his face. Even if it had been 15 years, the memories of the past were still vivid in his mind, and the teachings of His Excellency the hero were still in his ears. Now that the voice had appeared again, he naturally recognized it at once. Could it be that His Excellency? Ho, you still remember my voice. That's right, I'm the hero's familiar. Su Shinxing said solemnly and winked at the other party.